Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Tyler. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Good, man. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. Good to have you. Also joining us for the first time, a gentleman who is from what I am told, Stormcast aficionado. It's my first time meeting him, but Tyler speaks highly, and anybody Tyler speaks highly of, I will speak highly of. So, Dylan, welcome to the show, buddy. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the high praise.
Oh,
See if I can live up to it.
There we go. We're gonna talk about the golden boys and girls of Sigmar striking down from the heavens of Aesir to bring peace to the mortal realms and how they're gonna survive and fare in this new magic-dominated meta. That's gonna be our topic tonight. But of course, first, the news.
Rumor engine. So, is this a Flesh Eater Courts rumor engine we're looking at here?
No, it's a Zinchi
What was my
thing.
first thought? Zinchi thing? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a Zinch leg.
It's a Zinch leg.
Yeah.
Also, the way that they
Alright.
did the actual text around the rumor engine was completely Zinchi and like it's all weird and chaos and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So, and it's a bird leg, and it's stepping on a bearded guy who looks like a wizard, and it's got candles on it. So it's a magic-y thing because candles equal magic. That's just a direct equation in the mortal realms.
Right.
So it's a Zinchi thing.
All right. Cool. Good. Can be down for that. So
Maybe it's like the Zinch, I don't know, Harbinger, Dawnbringer thing, whatever that is. Like whatever the Zinch
Oh yeah.
thing they're gonna get is for whenever they show up and take part in the Dawnbringers situation.
Right.
So, I assume everybody
That
gets
would be-
something, so we'll see.
Yeah. That would make sense. I'm gonna pull up the show here.
Looking at the
And-
rumor engine, I can definitely see the Zinch.
Yeah.
It's a little like skeletal, so like I could see it being flesh orders, but yeah, I think Zinch is the right call.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh, I see you've got some fans in the channel, LaRon and Stormkeep. Let's get all the Missouri boys and girls here. Okay, so we have another Cities of Sigmar preview.
Yep.
The Wilder Core Hunters, I think was the name.
Sure.
Something along those lines.
Something to that effect.
Something to that effect. And yeah, we've got some puppy dogs, so we're inching closer toward being able to run an entire 2,000 point list of puppy dogs, which I'm excited about. Yeah, I like the look of these guys. They are doing a little bit more for me personally than most of this range so far. Dylan, what about you?
I'm really liking the new cities
Yeah.
stuff. I think the helmets are kind of where the divisive part is lied from the people I've talked to,
Yep.
and I'm a big fan of them. They're very like they remind me of an old game, Heroes of Might and Magic 5. The like peasants in that game had like a very similar like kind of
yeah.
like bucket hat, and I like grew up playing that game, and so a lot of my fantasy likes are from stuff that was iconic in that game.
You look too young to be talking about Heroes of Might and Magic.
Hold the phone on this. Okay. Heroes of Might. I'm literally typing something on my other computer. All right. We gotta check this.
Yeah.
Okay. Heroes of Might and Magic 5 came out on May 16th, 2006.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. All
Yep.
right.
So that's
like,
I was 8 at the
This
time.
this
Okay.
old game.
Well,
Yeah, sure.
I must be thinking about 2 and 3, because that's what I played a lot. And those were 90 games,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. So.
Correct. Yes. I mean,
Alright.
absolutely. In college, when I was playing Heroes of Might and Magic 2, that is correct. A decade earlier. So sure. But anyways, on these guys, I like it is the helmets. I think the helmets are pretty Marmite. Either you think they're cool or you don't. I will say they look better here than they did on some of the other troops. Things I like about these guys. I mean, dogs are good. Hit like for dogs. If you like dogs.
Mhm.
Do you like dags? Oh, dogs. Yes, I love dogs. So, like, fine, cool. I like the dude back here in like the top left, the guy with the spear who's just kind of standing regally.
Yeah. Yeah.
This old guy with the beard. I like how in the cities units we're getting like a lot of mixed body types. Just like people of lots of different shapes and sizes. Like, yeah, sure, everybody, you're all welcome. Let's get in here. The mortal realms are big. We got a lot of stuff to defend. Come on in, join the core, as it were, here, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of like stout and kind of like
Yeah.
just hanging out.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I like that. So that's cool. I am worried about the like. So now we got 5 dogs. Like half of this unit is dogs. This is like a Pacific Rim thing, where it's like the first 2 breaches were a year apart, and then 6 months. At this rate, they'll be 10 minutes apart. It was like first we had the crab, and then we waited months, and we got this thing, and now we're getting half of the unit as dogs. By 2025, we're all just playing Dungeons and Doggos. Like there is no more. It's all just pet animals. Humanoids have been eliminated. It's like an Animal Farm thing. Yeah, like they've clearly figured out that pets are popular, and so they're gonna throw pets into every ancillary sort of product, because this is both a unit in cities but also a Warcry warband, obviously, right? And so with stuff like that, I just sense that every Underworlds and Warcry warband we can stick some kind of cute small pet creature into, we're gonna do it. We're just gonna do it. Just get them in there. That has to be like, I want to see the memo that came down to GW sculpting directors that's like, more pets, period. That's it.
I feel like Warcry and Underworlds is like the perfect space for that kind of stuff, though, because like you get like the Powder Monkey, the one that came out a while ago for the pirates and all that, and they can kind of just like be a game piece for that. But it's also like a lot of people like specifically like to paint the Underworld stuff, and so that gives them an option without necessarily encroaching on being a full unit.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got the Sunday preview, Warcry, Crypt of Blood starter set coming out. So that's got some terrain pieces. It's got Zendire's Truth Seekers, the Crimson Court, some of the nice vampire models. I think there's at least 3 there.
I believe you get the vampires and the Stormcast guys. Yeah, we talked about it on the preview show. So, yeah, it's like the Underworld's teams repackaged into a half-y Warcry starter set situation. Sure.
Yep.
And sort of a weird mix of terrain that looks like the Garden of War but isn't the Garden of War. Looks like the Garden of War, like somebody sculpted the Garden of War from memory. And then a really cool bust of Neferata you just get for free.
Yeah. I like that playmat that they've got with this. I don't know. Looks good, the photo that they came out with. I'm gonna have to try Warcry at some point. Still have never gotten a game in with it. Dylan, you ever play any Warcry?
I played a couple games. It's pretty fun. I like it a lot. The Knight Arcanum is hilariously busted in Warcry, which is so funny because she's so terrible in actual Age of Sigmar. But it's fun. It's it's Age of Sigmar Light. So
that is often the way it goes in Warcry. Like if you're bad in AOS, you're probably amazing in Warcry. Like it's almost it tends to flip pretty directly. For a long time, KO were just like the most sideways broken thing in Warcry. They were outrageous. So maybe that's a counterexample to my point.
Sure. And some exciting news for this show. We've got the Questor Soulsworn coming out independently, separately, as well as the Royal Beast Flayers. People like Richie are doing terrible things with them at the moment, with what you can do with Flesh Eater Courts right now, especially with Nagash. Richie just went 5-0 in the UK over the weekend. But yeah, we'll talk more about this unit later on. This is going to be, I think, one of our hot picks of the night, Questor Soulsworn.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's going to come up in conversation. Absolutely. Yes. All right. Very good. Anything else in the news, or does that bring us to the end?
I think that was it.
All right. Let's move on to some pick of the week. Dylan, what did you want to share with everybody?
So I shared Haywo's faction focus guide for Stormcast Eternals. He put this out about 6 months ago, I think. I love everything Haywo does. I think he's got a really fun take on how he makes content for Age of Sigmar. He very much focuses in on it being a dad game. but also focuses on like the inner depths of the game too. Like I think he understands the game and what people who play the game like really well. And I think his Stormcast guide was fantastic. A few disagreements on some of the meta choices, but that's how it is.
It's always how it is. Absolutely. Yeah, I know it's a great video. Would recommend. 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 7, as Haywo would say. Tyler, what do you got? What do you want to share?
A reasonable 3 this week.
Okay.
Week and Decadent Thomas, instead of doing a battle report, he did a nice video breaking down completing battle tactics in the new GHB. So going through all of the factions, same idea, got some disagreements, but a lot of positives, a lot of good points he makes in that video. So yeah, put a lot of work into it. It's excellent. Goonhammer, they had an in-depth article by Gareth Hall. Apparently got to be named Gareth to play Blades of Khorne.
Sure. That is one of the requirements. I did catch that in the beginning of the book, yeah.
Yeah. Start competing, Blades of Khorne. Fantastic article. Incredibly in-depth. Just about all the ins and outs of Blades of Khorne. So if you're interested in learning more or getting better with that army, highly recommend that. And then finally, for some reason, my friends keep inviting me back to the Cubic Shenanigans podcast to talk about the GHB. So we just did a pod a few weeks back that came out a couple of days ago with Brendan, who I think is in your neck of the woods now. I'm waiting for him to show up at your house and to maybe start taking over some co-hosting duties so I can have some more time off. Is Brendan, have you talked to him yet? You're not paying attention. He's not paying attention. This is what happens when you read his comments. He just completely zones everything out.
I was like, I don't think I know this person.
Yes. What was your? Oh, sorry, Tyler. What was your question? I did get lost in the comments.
Melnick, have you seen him yet in Ohio? I think he's in Ohio now.
My understanding is he's just arriving, so I'm letting him get settled in. We've been texting. Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I'm very excited. He knows he's got a game coming. He's gonna be rocking over here into the dojo soon, I'm sure. So
excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, hopped on with Melnick and Dan. We had a good time going through the GHB and the July Battlescroll. That's all I got.
No, that's fine. Very nice. You had so many picks, I completely spaced out, and I was like, Tyler's just going to be going for a while, so I don't.
Just let him go.
It's fair.
Yeah, I don't have to dial back in. My pick of the week for everybody is actually a really fun video from Sam Lenz, a friend and an all-around amazing artist. It's him talking about painting a combat patrol, actually for 40K, but nonetheless, the lessons I think and things he talks about in there are applicable to miniature painting of any fantasy or sci-fi variety. And Sam is an awesome dude, as always, so do check that out. Links for all of that down in the description below. All right, and as we segue into some hobby time, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, do all those things that make all those dings. It's helpful and helps other people find the channel and costs you basically nothing. It's as easy as a little click. All right, so let's talk about some hobby time. Dylan, what have you been working on, buddy?
So yeah, as I alluded to when we were pre-talking before the show, I've been working on my Gateway Open list, which is a tournament down here in Missouri, and it is the Evocators on Dracolines is what I've specifically been working on. I've been trying out some speed paints, trying some stuff to kind of speed me up because I am a notoriously slow painter, and I've been really enjoying the speed paints.
Nice, that's fantastic. Is this the new formula you're using, the Speed Paints 2.0?
Indeed.
Very nice. I've been experimenting with those myself recently, so there you go. How about that? They are interesting. No, that's cool. And kitty caters, huh? Okay. All right.
Oh yeah.
I like it. I like it. We're going to talk about kitty caters, I'm sure, as well. So we're going to have some fun times when we get into the unit discussion. All right. Tyler, what about you, buddy? What's been on your desk? What have you been working on?
I know it's been too many weeks where I haven't been doing anything. Work's been insane, so I'm going to have to put a stop to this soon. I wanted to give a sincere thank you. All of the BS that we give each other. Our friend Anthony Castro had a couple of big boxes show up at my house when I was out of town, and so thank you, Anthony. A couple of terrain tables for Vol Wars. So very appreciative. I think some others, Steve Herner, I think had that happen to him as well. I saw a tweet go out by Herner. So yeah, Castro, the legend grows. I got a game in with my list, and things were clicking. I competed against a really strong Zinch list last night, so felt good about that. got a game against OBR next week, so we will see how that goes against the horrifying OBR right now of Catacross, Narcan, and the usual.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it was nice to see it working as intended.
Nice, fantastic. For myself, it's actually been quite an intense hobby week. So next week is Gen Con. So as a note to everyone, next week's show will be very early on Wednesday. I don't know the exact time yet, but if you're watching this, do please note the show will be like very early in the day at some point, whatever I can figure out for time with Tom. And so what that means is, since I'm teaching there, it's model prep time. So I was actually spent most of the weekend just assembling and prepping models for both Gen Con and for Nova. So I've got 2 teaching events coming up. Nova's at the end of August. Obviously, Gen Con's at the beginning. It's just easier to kind of knock it all out at once. So, I mean, it was like assembling just a metric ton of minis to put together for people to paint in my classes and stuff like that. So, still didn't get totally done, but I made a lot of progress. There's only so much you can just continually assemble stuff before you lose your mind. I also did get a little painting going on 2 different projects. One I can't share, the other being I'm continuing to work on my Tau that are back there. So, yeah, and also got a bunch of that footage for working on everything I'm working on recorded. So you know, then made more videos and stuff, because I have to now, because I have so much travel coming up, I have to like pre-record a bunch of videos. So it was a very, very intense hobby weekend and beginning of the week for me. Not as much as I would have liked. It was actually just sitting there painting. Assembling and priming masses of minis is never the most exciting thing of it, but hey, that's okay. That's life. You don't want people to show up to a class and be like, well, I hope you all brought a mini because I got nothing. That's not going to work.
I just, as you were talking about, it popped in my head. I didn't catch in one of our Facebook threads. It was a grid of content creators and where they fall on the spectrum, the D&D spectrum, and they nailed you, my friend, with Chaotic Good. That was just perfection.
Thank you. Yes, that's like using the 25 bar sort of insane alignment chart as opposed to like the standard 9 of D&D. That's like if somebody that's some horrible offspring of like Rifts plus D&D. But that being said, yes, I do agree with that take. I was perfectly happy with my placement. Thank you all for I'd like to thank the Academy for voting me Chaotic Good. I fully support that and will now rebel against anything the Academy has to say going forward, of course, because authority derives only from the governed, not from anywhere else. Okay. So with that, let's turn to our topic, shall we, gentlemen? Everybody ready to talk a little Stormcast Eternals in the new meta?
Always.
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
Let's talk.
Congrats, Caleb, on the 5-0. He's there in the channel once again. 5-0 with Zinch.
I mean, the man is the man, the myth, the legend. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He can't be stopped. Okay, so Stormcast in the Magic meta. Let's get into it. I love this piece of art. Haywo also has a version of this. You mentioned Haywo earlier, where he photoshopped like Bastion's chest to be like huge, so he's just like super ripped. It's very funny. He did like a really subtle version of it. Okay, but this is a great piece of art. All right, Stormcast. Quick overview, and I'll look for your feedback here as well, gentlemen, to get your overview and your feel on this. But here's my general take on it. Current season aside, Stormcast is just always complicated to build with. Like, it's especially challenging for newer players. You pop that book, you got like 70 war scrolls, 39, 40 of them are heroes, sorry, right? There are just options and traps aplenty all over the place. Like, there are some that are just straight up traps, complete zots for their points, basically. At the same time, this army, when built right, I think does combined arms better than most other forces out there. Like, and have a nice mix of all the different roles you would want, threatening at different ranges, playing in most of the phases in interesting ways. That's pretty great, right? And one of the challenges, I think, with Stormcast has been since 3.0's launch, and frankly, this goes back farther than that, is just getting a lot of these units costed correctly. Like, it's a high armor, elite-ish force. Let's just call it elite. And that kind of stuff's always tough to point. Because if mortal wounds or magic floods the meta or something, your troops are basically much worse and worth a lot less because they just roll over and die. If the meta's full of like a bunch of Rend 1 and Rend 0 and like just kind of bodies that you can pretty easily blow through with models that we've mentioned here, like Kitty Caters or like Draco, or like Fulminators or stuff like that, then suddenly it's a whole different story. Right, so like, what is the objective? I'm gonna put giant finger air quotes around that. Right, correct points value for these guys is often really tough. It's not as easy as like saying, okay, well, this is just like 10 average dudes with like a 4 or 5 up save that have a decent attack profile. They're like somewhere between 80 and 100 points, right? And it's like it's not gonna be off that much, right? A lot of these units can be way off because they're priced like so high. They can just be way off the mark, right?
Yeah.
And have like a material impact on your list building capability. Okay. But ultimately, having that kind of wide toolbox, having a mix of shooting, melee, mobility, screens, all of that. Now moving to the current season, factoring in, Tyler, this was your point, like magic or anti-magic and kind of, or a little of how you're going to ride that wave in Cantors, these kinds of things becomes really important, right? All right. So, Dylan, I'm going to go to you first. Does that feel like a fair summary, or is that kind of your take on the army overview as a whole? Anything I said there you disagree with, or anything you want to add?
No, I think what you said definitely goes with most of my thoughts. I think we do a lot of things okay. And if you really want to do something well, you really have to index into doing it well. And I think it's a hard ask for the army to like be a true like jack of all trades army like with your like standard list. I think you definitely like heavily index into, am I gonna be like alpha striking? Am I gonna be like super like anti-magic? Am I gonna be very like durable and just hold points? I think you kind of like heavily index into which way you want to go, but I think they do the combined arms thing well because they kind of like have like a secondary like thing you can put into lists. Like you'll put in these big like blocks that sit on objectives, but then you also get shooting that supplements it well, or a little bit of magic that supplements it well.
Yep. Okay. Tyler?
Yeah. So, I've long thought, I've said on the show before, that this faction has been one of the more underrated factions when it comes to the pleasure that, the joy, the experience one can derive from playing them. Like how fascinating, how enriching they can be, deep they can be. They have tremendous variety in list, even though we often don't see that as much as I think we should, because it's easy to get focused on the shiny, which is, Fulminators or Stormdrake Guard or Long Strikes.
Yep.
And so you often don't see as much diversity, variety in list as we could. But yeah, I think the faction has held up incredibly well throughout 3rd edition. It was strong out of the gate in terms of at least what I'm biased to like, which is variety and toolbox armies, combined arms armies, where you can have depth. You can lean into combo plays really well with this army. It's like you're setting up synergies often with Stormcast, where A to B to C. So it's very much, in my mind, getting a lot out of it. And my games against Dylan, you do this well, Dylan, which is creating an experience where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts with Stormcast. And so I think a lot of people in my mind just don't take that approach enough with their list building and their play style with the army. They tend to fixate on hammers. hammers, 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 and it's more of a straightforward play experience, like trying to kill your opponent early, right? Win early, score late, that sort of thing.
As though you're trying to play
yeah.
like Stormcast as Iron Jaws or something like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, let's get into some deets. So we're gonna start with some traps and overrated units. How about that? Okay. So these could be overcosted. These could be things we think that like people take a lot of that we think are actually not very good at all. These could be things that are just straight up traps. Like they have rules, they have points, but in fact, it's a trap. Right?
Do not play them.
Yeah, do not play them. It is, you have made a mistake if you have added them to a list. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's kind of start with maybe some heroes type stuff, right? So what are the sort of heroes that we think potentially fall into this zone of like traps? Like what should players be avoiding, especially in the current season? Dylan, I'm gonna let you throw out the first couple. Feel free to toss out a couple, right? We can discuss as we see fit.
Right. So I think, unfortunately, Stormcast units, like you were saying, some of them are just that you cannot play them. Like, yes, they have rules, but if you put them in a list, you are not doing things right. And some of them that come off the top of my head is Gavriel Sureheart, Base Lord Castellant,
or Lord Celestin, I think you mean.
Yes, of course.
Lord Celestin. Yeah,
Lord Celestin, yeah. Castellan's great. Lord Celestin.
The Celestin, the guy with a worse attack profile than a Claw Lord, and is meant to be the sort of
our big
leader of
melee punchy hero.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just yes, unreal. Okay. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
God, what am I thinking of? Go ahead and take over, Tyler, while I'm thinking.
No, that's fine.
Well, I'm cheating. I've got a list in front of me. Neve Black Talon. Neve, unfortunately, I mean, they've nailed the story around her with Warhammer Plus animation. That's an incredible series. But yeah, my God, the War Scroll. That's probably the number one on the board of War Scrolls that need to get updated. Errant Questor, Lord Ordinator. You know, the Celestar Ballistas is the one obvious shooting unit in my mind that does not get there. I mean, I know they dropped the points, but
stick to
I'm
leaders.
not sure.
Leaders first.
Yeah.
Heroes
Sorry,
first.
leaders first. Yeah, so Lord Ordinator is terrible. Do you guys rate the Knight Heraldor at all? I haven't seen that much on the table.
I've seen it on the table, and I think every time they play it, I'm like, this is a mistake. Like, you'll blow up some new players or people who don't know what the Heraldor does, but like any player that knows just stay 3 inches away from terrain, it's just like, oh, okay, now your 110 point hero does literally nothing.
Well, especially because most tournaments and the way that GW recommends you play keeps all objectives away from terrain, right? Like it has to be set up sort of a minimum of usually 3 inches away from terrain. And so the problem with the Heraldor is that once you explain what he does, right? It's exactly what you said. Yeah. Any sensible player will just be like, okay, I just won't touch the terrain unless I like absolutely need to for some obscure reason. And even then, it's not as though that's suddenly going to be backbreaking in most cases, right? It's just not like doing enough that suddenly they they've lost because they touched the terrain. It's not the what's the Realmscape Ritualist or whatever it is in Khorne, where it's like, you run up, pick a piece of terrain, and then everybody's getting a bonus in like this quite a decent radius around that piece of terrain, right? That's a totally different thing. That's a good way to interface with terrain because it's putting it under your control, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah, your opponent just be like, oh, I'm literally just like 3 inches out, and like you said, like even if they are, unless the person is playing like the super meme like 5 Knight Heraldor list, like they take D3 mortal wounds and they're kind of like, okay, whatever,
right,
move on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like, okay, oh no. Anyway, yeah, it's just exactly.
Were you doing one bucket, Vince, with traps and overrated, or were you doing?
Yeah, this is all overrated, bad traps, anything that makes them anything like that. Yeah.
So just to get a couple of the more obvious ones out of the way, Dregsworn Templar, that's the other version of the dragon, the old dragon, right?
I do think it is the better version for what it's worth.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think.
Why is that?
So I think the 4-up save is obviously what like really hurts Khorne Templar. But he is 50 points cheaper. He does have better shooting, and he still gives you the +1 magic, which I think is what you really want from him. And being a properly keyworded behemoth hero, so you can take like Master of Celestial Menagerie and all that to get your other behemoths -1 to wound. I still don't think he's good, but I do think he is better than the Star Drake.
Interesting.
Like, I completely agree with that take. My issue with that guy, with the Drakesworn Templar, and it's a shame because he does, as you mentioned, you kind of mentioned this in passing, but it's worth deep diving into this. Okay, like I do want to talk about this for a minute because I feel like this guy is sort of endemic of something that happens a lot. So the Drakesworn Templar is 400 points. Okay, this is everybody knows this. This is the big Storm Drake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the ranged attack. I mean, yeah, he has his extra bow. I'm not sure I'm going to call that better ranged attacks, but sure. I mean, I'll give it to you. He does have more of a ranged attack, right? Mm-hmm. The funny thing about this guy is he has something that feels really aligned to the current season. So he has this giant radius, like 18 inches, of +1 to cast for you and -1 to cast for your enemies. All right, and that's like a big radius off of this base because he's on the Imperial Knight 170 mil base, and he can do the whole like eat people thing and stuff. Like that's all fun, right? So it's all fun. It's all fine. The problem with this dude is exactly, and you mentioned it, like a 4-up base save on a monster of that size with no ward save, right? He's got 18 wounds. Okay, sure. Like, that's a decent number of wounds. But he's on a 4-up save, and his actual attack profile is like, what? Fine?
I was like, it's not great.
Fine. He has, like, the big claws are -2 rend, and that's it. Everything else is -1 rend, or no rend, or whatever you happen to have. And so the issue is, it's not that he doesn't have some really interesting utility, because here's where I'm saying this is endemic. A lot of these units, especially like monster mounted Stormcast heroes, and I would argue the same is like true for Aventus Firestrike and people like that, right? Is that it's not that there's no utility there. There is. There's some cool utility there. Okay? It's that the cool utility isn't 400 points of cool utility. Like, if that utility was on a 200-point hero, I'd be like, okay, we came to play. We got something going on here, right? Now, like, I'm assuming it isn't a giant monster and all of that. Like, it's just a dude who's 6 or 7 wounds, but still does all those same things, right? Could, like, give my army the bonus that you mentioned, like, from the command trade, or still have this big giant aura to cast, or whatever, right? That's fine. My issue is, and I see Robert Bullshine showing up to defend it. He's saying the Drakesworn Templar is very good. I just can't agree, man. I just can't agree, because my problem is he's not 400 points. I don't know the world where he pays off those points. Like, I agree he's super interesting and useful in the season, in that magic buff. And if there was a 200-point version of him, I'd take him. But 400 points is just too much for what I get out of this guy. He can't fight anything. He dies very easy.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
I mean, like, he's comparable to Kronspine almost. Like, you think about, like, if you're really wanting him, like, for the magic bonus, like, it's, like, you pay 80 more points for a Kronspine and get, like, a very similar effect while being an incredible actual, like, anvil that you can, like, just throw into the middle of the board. While, like, the Drakesworn Templar and especially the Star Drake, like, you gotta be, like, really careful with them, because they get touched by any kind of hammer unit and they just die. And you lose all that utility and 400 points of your army. Like,
so Robert's defending him with the Tempest Axe, which of course strips away, like, it has a very bad attack profile, but it does strip away the pile-in move from enemies. And he's saying, when you have, so you take retreat and charge, you take the axe, so that way no one can pile in. Like, okay, it's an interesting bit of utility. I'm still not buying it. I'm really not. Like, maybe against some units, but, like, at the same time, I just, like, I don't, OBR just hits you with 3 big giant elite dudes that have a horrendous profile, strip your armor completely off, and then murder you. Like, and they cost less than you do. like by a decent amount,
Yeah,
and they don't
I
need
mean
to
every
pile
once in
in.
a while, right? I could see catching some people out with a combination of Cavernous Jaws and Tempest Axe, right? Where you
Sure,
break coherency
Yeah.
through the
sure.
combination of those two, and yeah, but I mean cannot move more than 1 inch. I mean they can still pile in 1 inch, so it's not as if they're not moving at all in that situation. But yeah, that seems a little situational, and yeah, tend to agree.
And
I
it's
mean,
like,
But
what in
there
the
are certainly
meta, like,
more
is that actually
large.
good?
Yeah, there are certainly more large units floating around. Zombies and squig herds and stuff like that continue to be a thing, right? As far as like units that you have to be aware of. So things like your cavernous jaws are higher value this season certainly. But like I think right now I honestly I'm going to agree with Mergonk on this one. I think it's just too lethal the meta right now for what this dude is.
yeah,
Like it's pretty
when
easy
it's
for
like
this dude to eat something.
right, White Gordrak has had a hard time seeing the table throughout the entire third edition with its 4+ save compared to the 3 up with the cabbage, despite the notable output that you can get from Gordrak.
Mm-hmm.
The yeah, so some of the others, let's see. Somebody mentioned Stormkeep mentioned Vandus. I think that's dead wrong, personally.
I
I'm
think
obviously a huge stan of Vandus. I think you thought he was overcosted, which I find surprising as well. You want to say more about
Yeah,
Vandus?
yeah.
let's talk about Vandus. Vandus is an interesting
Yeah.
guy. I think I'm going to come
Mhm.
down more on the Tyler side, but I'm willing to be won over. So just let's lay down. Let me lay down some basics. Vandus is worth a
Um,
quick discussion. So our classic original OG
mm,
Stormcast boy, right? Best boy. In like the
mm.
very first scenario in the very first book, this was the one guy you played, right? You put him down and then he went
Yeah.
out and fought a Korgorath. Like that was game one, day one, right? Okay.
Right.
So 190 points for a 10-inch move, 9 wounds, the perfect number of wounds,
Mm,
with a 3 up save, right? Obviously, he has his little Storm Blast, his little spit. He's got his hammer, which is 3 attacks on 3s, 2s, neg 1, 3 damage. He gets 2 extra attacks if he charged, so he goes up to 5 attacks. He strips off Battle Shock for everybody within 24 inches of him. Not that that's generally a huge deal, but he
mm.
does it. And then once per turn, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one friendly Hammers of Sigmar Redeemer unit, wholly within 12. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that unit's melee weapons until the end of that phase. So he makes some Redeemers more attacky for free. Okay, now let's talk him. So Dylan, you're not rating him. Okay, where do we go?
So let me be clear. Last season, I think Vandus was great. I think losing Galatian veterans is pretty much the worst possible thing that could happen with Vandus.
Okay.
Because right now his force multiplier is so much worse. You're either putting it on like a unit of 5 redeemers, so sequitors, vanquishers, or liberators or vindictors, and anything except for vindictors, you're only going to be able to get 5 in, and you're getting like 1 extra attack, and it's like okay. I think liberators and vanquishers, their output is atrocious, and I think taking him to boost a unit of 5 of them is definitely not what you want to be doing. A unit of 5 sequitors is better, but I still think there are far better ways to spend your points. And so then the obvious like thought is the big block of vindictors that you juice up with him.
Sure.
And I don't think vindictors get to be killy enough, even with an extra attack. There would be 3 attacks each with mortal wounds on 6s, like, but you're paying an extra 190 points to juice them. So then you're looking at like, it's what, like 450 points total for Vandus and the block of, is that right? Yeah, 450 for the block of 10 vindictors and Vandus. Like at that point, you are 10 points more, or okay, so 430. So 10 points less than a double block of protectors, which I think does that, but so much better. Like you're tankier, you're killier, you have more attacks, like you're more resilient. Like I think it's just a much better way to go than the Vindictor, like juiced up by Vandus route.
Okay, all right, Tyler.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point on Galatian veterans hurting Vandus as far as broader value. Obviously, I've been playing him with 10 Vindictors and trying out every once in a while 15. Now, I do think 15 is notable with him, but yeah, it is also a fair point, the comparison with protectors.
Sure.
So I do, at least for me, with Vandus, there is a little bit of the get out of jail card of the special snowflake going on because because I want to play something that's a little different. With that said, I think he does get there enough. So with the comparison of Tim Protectors, I had not thought about that before. I think that's reasonable. That, yeah, you look at that on a lot of lists on paper, that's going to get more value, you would think. Now, that is potentially impacting your list building. So with my list building, I'm often going Warlord and Taurian Acolytes. So that means I got to have 5 heroes. And I like him as part of that set of 5 with the battle shock immunity that he's providing the army. Now, I'm often not running a list that is going to be heavily impacted by battle shock, but even being impacted a little bit, it just means that I simply, for the most part, don't ever have to worry about it. Right. And I've been keeping track in my games how often that's coming up, and at least for me, it's coming up to a meaningful degree in my games.
It's definitely relevant. As somebody who's played a lot of Andrasta, who has the same kind of battle shock immunity, even just like saving a CP like once a game is fairly relevant.
Right. When you're so starved on CP with Stormcast, yeah. And so there's that element, and he does have potentially notable output. So up to, let's see, 8, 15, 23 damage, I believe, somewhere around there. So up to 15 from his hammer, and up to 8 from the Dracoth on the charge.
The spit too.
And the spit too.
The spit too. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So now, of course, he's only -1 rend on the 3 damage. He can be swingy with the attack, with that type of attack characteristic, as is often true with these types of heroes, right? Andrasta is the embodiment of this, Bastion. So, but yeah, on the whole, I can see that. Like, I'm not going to argue that it's a slam, sort of clear case for him, but I do think he gets over the line in a meaningful way for me.
So I'm going to come down, I suspect, slightly in the middle. Because here's where I sit with him. I actually think that third ability that we're focusing on there at the beginning is just a complete and total trap. Dylan, I think you're actually right. I don't give a flying hoot about that.
Oh, the +1?
Yeah,
plus one attack.
Like, if it incidentally triggers sometime on my unit of Vindictors or whatever, like, neat. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to set it up. If it's convenient for me to do so, great. I generally hate tight bubble buffs because I feel like they make you play worse. Like, I'm just going to say that. Like, I want to be able to, especially in Stormcast, I think Stormcast win when you can use your pieces, your game pieces, as individually as possible to do whatever you need. And what I mean by that is using them in concert when you need to use them in concert, and using them independently when they need to go independently. Okay? I don't ever, this is why I don't rate, I'll go right to my hero here, which I think showed up on somebody else's list is very high. But one of my biggest traps is Gardas. Okay? Like, I understand what a 5-up ward does, but you end up, I don't care what anybody says, you change your play. And you start playing gather round him because you fear losing that ward, and it just makes you play worse. Like, all the success, anytime I've ever had success in a tournament with Stormcast, it's when, like, I could just, because I needed to, this unit's going to go over here, this unit's going to go over here, this guy's going straight up the middle, this guy's going to hang back, you know what I mean? Just like, poof, scatter, right? Like, everybody go somewhere, do a thing I need, and then in the next round when I need you to be together, right? Like, but I'll teleport a dude over here, and then yada yada, like whatever, right? Like, now we combine hammer strike on this one unit we need to now suddenly combine on, right? So it's like, to me, that's like, I don't want to have to care about balancing bubbles. If you're balancing bubbles in Stormcast, it's a trap. That's just a blanket statement for me. That's why I think Gardas is a trap. His ability is super strong. Like, it's super strong. Like, so strong. I cannot state how strong having a 5-up ward in this army is. It is so strong. Okay? But I feel like you're generally going to play worse and make worse decisions because of it. Now, back to Vandus. For the reasons that I said, like, Vandus, I would love him, and he would be an A+ choice for me if one of these two things were true. he was like 170 points, not 190, or he had Ren 2. And I would prefer the Ren 2. Okay? Now, but it's not a deal breaker for me. I like base damage 3. I do think he can do decent damage. It just means you have to pick your fights a lot more carefully with him. But I do like that he's a fairly mobile, fairly tough, interesting piece. Right? Again, I'm not sure I wouldn't take Bastion first. Bastion lacks the mobility, but has a lot of other things I really enjoy. We'll talk about him in a minute, I'm sure. But to me, he's somewhere in the middle ground where, like, when used correctly, he's an interesting independent operator. And that bubble of his Battleshock community is so huge, you basically don't have to care. Right? Like, it's so massive. You can just, like, whatever. He's way over here, and it's like, it's fine. His bubble's still extending. It's just like, it's the board, you know?
Right.
That's my
Dylan,
take.
I'd love to hear. Yeah. I'd love to hear you say a few things about Gardas, Dylan, because I know you've played him quite a bit. But just as a last, I didn't say anything about the +1 attack. Again, I've played probably 16 games now with the Vandus Timidictors combination, and I rate it pretty highly, personally. I mean, may not seem like a lot, but the comparison with Tim Protectors is fair, right? Like,
sure.
Again, I don't.
That's why I think it's a trap. You're like, Dylan's dead on. You just take the 10 Protectors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's if you're talking about pure optimization, it's hard to not just concede that. And so but anyway, I've been impressed by it.
You can't treat that +1 attack like the ice cream. It's sprinkles. That's all it is. It's sprinkles on the sundae. If it's there or not, who cares? Right? That's not why I took him. Either the ice cream is good enough or it's not. That's it.
So I think a problem with that. So this kind of goes. I think about this army a lot of the times in like opportunity cost, and I think a lot of these heroes that want to fight. So Bastion and Drosta, Vandus.
Sure.
You are giving up an actual fighty unit. And so, like, I think you need to be comparing, like, if you're talking about Vince, like, sending Vandus to go be a lone operator and kind of, like, supporting the board, like, from a distance. I think I think you just take a unit that does that. And so something like a unit of Fulminators, who I'm not particularly high on right now either, or, like, a Chariot or something like that.
Sure.
And, I don't know, I also think we have differences in battalions. I tend to try and get like as close to 3 heroes as possible. Well, it sounds like you guys are trying to fit more for like 5 or 6.
I have been at 3 historically, but the Acolytes battalion has got me, and so. But I don't like doing 5 heroes personally. It's painful.
So I'm like, I would love to drop this hero to take a more efficient unit that also like goes out and kills things, because the heroes are not efficient at killing things. Like, I've done a lot of calculations on damage, and like the damage heroes do for their point is so abysmal compared to like units.
You're on that. I have no disagreement. You are absolutely right. And just like as a statement in general, this is an army where it's very easy, because as I mentioned, more than half the war scrolls are heroes. It's easy to get caught up in the hero trap in this army. So like one of the we should state this as a thing that I think we would all agree with. Too many heroes in Stormcast is just a trap in and of itself, because then you just don't have the actual useful units you need to go and do things. I've always had more success with basically less heroes rather than more is the shortest answer there. Like in general, I do actually tend to agree with you. I'm preferring a 3 hero list most of the time. So okay. Other traps and overrated units. I'm gonna throw out a few. I'm gonna throw out a few little names here. I just want to. We're gonna get a take on them. Okay. All right. Okay. Everybody ready?
Yep. We're doing like lightning round, like
it's
quick,
like lightning
up,
round. Yeah. Is this unit a trap? Okay. It very well might be. Is it a trap? Is it a trap? All right. Let's figure it out. Here we go. Okay. Lord Exorcist.
Trap.
Is this a trap? Yeah.
If he were 50 points cheaper, I think I'd love him. But God, he's so expensive.
Tyler?
Yeah, he needs to be a little cheaper, but he is getting close if he can drop a little bit because in this meta with OPR bringing back models, other armies bringing back models, it's interesting
Definitely
as a utility
better in
piece.
this meta than it was, like 6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I love the idea of having an assist in a game against OPR that's just saying no to Immortus Guard putting models back or Stalkers putting models back. Yeah, that sounds
Nine
like a good
inches
time.
is tough though for a
That
little
is a little tough
hero.
as well. You kind of gotta set that up. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, a little too high right now.
This guy's so fascinating to me because it is the definition of like, can a sideboard card get good enough in the current meta to actually main deck in your army, right? Because that's what he is,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Like, if no one's returning models, who cares? Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares about this guy? He's obviously a complete waste, right? But if the sort of like slain models being returned is happening left and right and everywhere, center, then I don't know, maybe this guy can do some stuff. My issue is exactly what you said. 9 inches at an 150 points, that is way too close. And like, this dude is just gonna get like, they're just gonna kill him if that's what they're if that's what their plan is. He's not surviving. I think we got to rate this guy a trap. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the big brothers, Krondus and Karzai. The big Karzai. Sorry, there's an extra A there. The big boys. All right, Dylan, where are you sitting on these two?
So I think Karazai is you are having a for fun game if you play him. I think he is basically unplayable in a competitive game. I think Krondus, I don't know, jury's out on Krondus. I've played one game with him since the point drops, and I think the list I had around him was bad because it was more of a casual game. But I think he actually did very, very well. It's just, he's a lot of points. It's hard to fit him in and support him because I think he also needs a lot of support pieces.
Okay.
yeah.
Tyler?
Yeah, I don't like them as much for different reasons than I did last season. So a friend of ours, John, he did really well with Tempestors, Krondus, and some other pieces playing in Missouri. A fascinating list, leaning into the reducing save and basically like buffing up the rend on Tempestors and Judicators with Boltstorm crossbows. It was an awesome list that John put together. So with Karazai this season, yeah, I think it's going to be too many points in one model where the nature of the battle tactics you're going to be looking to achieve, the way that these missions operate. It just strikes me as it's going to be more challenging than he was last season. I think he was probably a little underplayed. Yeah, giving a long answer. So for Krondus, I suspect he's going to suffer from anti-magic. Like as we've said on the show, my expectation is that the first move, right, is to think there's going to be more magic on the table, so I need to lock into some anti-magic. And then we're going to have too much of an overweighting into anti-magic, which may then have some interesting, next steps from that point on. But so yeah, I think Krondus is going to have a harder time getting his spells out and getting the value.
Yeah. Oh God, I love these guys. I really do. Like, I love them so much. They're so cool. They're like the coolest dudes.
Yeah.
They're like awesome. And I put a lot of effort into my custom guy, and I've run both of them in tournaments actually. Like, I've run a Karzai focused list at a couple tournaments and a Krondus focused list at NashCon last year. Did pretty good with it. And
I think Karazai is more playable to me than Krondus this season. Like if I were going to go to a tournament, I would run Karazai personally.
Okay.
Because,
just for the extra rend, or like?
Yeah, for the more reliable output, because I would be expecting to have less value derived from Krondus's casting. To me, it would be more of a melee output play with some Praetors to help keep Karazai going.
Because the only difference between them, right, if I'm remembering right, is that one of Karazai's attack has an extra rend on it, and then Karazai is the level up thing and Krondus is the magic thing, right?
I don't remember exactly to that level of detail off the top of my head. That sounds right, but I'll double check here real quick.
But the point being is that they're both like fairly comparable in melee. So I'm surprised to hear that you like.
It's two more attacks on the jaws.
Okay, it is two more attacks on the jaws. Okay,
and better and the rend.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna come down with Tyler on this one. I actually am gonna stand Karzai as well. Because I mean, look, let's just say both of these things are like near suicide plays right now. I mean, let's just start there. Opening bid. Okay. I think you look at the +3 to cast on Krondus. If that +3 was also to unbind and dispel, my opinion would flip
100%.
faster than a flapjack on a hot griddle. Okay, just like boy, oh boy. But the issue is, it's not. It's just a cast, and there's going to be lots of people out there taking. He has a great spell, but people are just going to have a bunch of stuff that makes them ignore magic.
Yeah.
Right. To either auto dispel or ignore. You're going to see Null Myriad. You're going to see lots of Khorne players. You're going to see people with auto unbinds. So, like, it doesn't matter if you can get it off. It doesn't, like, getting an extra +3 is neat, but I just think the second order consequences of how the meta is going to react to the magic, I really do still stand behind the fact that I think anti-magic is going to win in this season, and yet again, we're going to be cursed with another season where, like, the thing it's supposed to be about isn't the thing. Unless it's too, like, unless it's two middle players. I don't mean mid-table players. I mean just like middle army players playing each other, where it's like they have one wizard with +1 to cast and the other guy has one wizard with +1 to cast, and they found each other at the tournament, right? And it's like they're gonna have a grand old time. I still stand behind this, right? They're gonna be using primal magic dice in all sorts of wacky ways. It's just gonna be great for them. But Karzai at 530 points, which is still 30 points too many, at least. These guys should be 500. Like, geez, Pete's, they should be 500. Can we please just make them 500 points?
Sure.
At least I've got the play to say, okay, this guy can do, like, a lot of extra damage. Like, Neg 3 Rend is a lot better than Neg 2. Like, a lot better than Neg 2.
Yeah. And he buffs up. We haven't said that yet. Fires of Vengeance, his ability.
He does buff up. He has his RPG mechanic. Yeah, which, by the way, don't undercount that. Like, in all the games I played with him, I leveled him some in every single game I ever played with him.
Did you get the meaningful level up, though? Because I feel like the hero one is the only one that's, like, really meaningful.
I mean, the hero one's amazing. And no, the hero one's amazing. I think they're all fine. Like, it's all good. Buffs are buffs, right? Like, I'll take free buffs. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna be like... I'm sorry, I'm too good for that. No, like, it's a free buff.
I don't need +1 to run in charge, thank you.
Yeah, all good over here. No, I mean, so they're all like, they're all functional. That is to say, but yes, obviously the hero buff's amazing. And I mean, I think probably 2 games in out of the 2. Like, I took these guys to 2 tournaments with Karzai at the helm, and I think probably 2 out of 5 games I managed to kill a hero with him. It's actually not that hard if you protect him well enough, right? Like, somebody's gonna have to have a hero out. Are you going to get it turn 1? No, but you're going to get it somewhere in the mid game, right? Like, it'll happen. Yeah. And then hopefully that just brings him into the point where he can then really back clean up. But I think he's a super high risk piece just because of the season and the lethality of it. I think that's the downside. But if I was going to pick one, I'd pick Karzai and say, I'll put all my chips in on melee. At least I'm going to get something out of it. So.
Yeah.
But I think right now they're both probably traps or borderline traps, just because I think they often will just roll over.
Yeah.
They're really easy to just blow up turn 1. Like,
unless you have like so much invested in protecting them, and then it's not worth it anymore.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's pick another guy here. Okay. Knight Vexilor. But which Knight Vexilor?
I was gonna say, which one?
Because I have very different opinions about the 2 of these guys. Let's talk about him in general. Sure. Yep, totally fair. All right, Dylan, give me your Knight Vexilor breakdown. Where are you falling? I know which one I'm backing. But go ahead.
Okay, so for those who aren't in the know, there are 3 of them. 1 reses / heals, 1 drops a big AoE Mortal Wound Meteor, and 1 teleports stuff, Translocate.
There we go.
I think the obvious good one is the AoE Meteor one. I think he can do some pretty neat stuff, especially with some of the other tools that Stormcast has, like Celestin Prime or like the Everblaze Comet. You can kind of just like kill all of an opponent's foot heroes before they move, which is obviously really good in this foot wizard hero season. So he can kind of be seen as like anti-magic in a lot of ways. I think the teleport one is... There's some like gimmick strats I've seen with them, but I don't think it's particularly good. You're still dropping outside of 9 inches. It's still like in your hero phase. It's kind of whatever. And the Apotheosis one, the res/heal one, I think has some fun casual builds, but I don't think we'll ever actually see play it like a top table.
Dylan, I knew I liked you. That's exactly the way I would rank it. You're exactly right. Look, I think people look at the banner of Apotheosis, of the Stormbringer. I apologize, the Pennant of Stormbringer. And I think they look at the Apotheosis, and I think they look at the Meteoric Standard. They look at those three, and they go, well, that teleport seems really cool. Mobility is good in this game, right? Mm-hmm. And bringing back models is really cool. And this is just a D3 Mortal Wounds, right? I think that's what often ends up happening a lot. But I look at that and go, yeah, but that's like a D3 Mortal Wounds to a 12-inch diameter, right? Because it's a 6-inch radius from the point you pick. Mm-hmm. So it's like I just carry this little nice 12-inch clear ruler from Warcry. I like set it down and then spin it like a helicopter in place, and I'm like, all of this taking all a D3 Mortal
D3,
all of it. I'm not. This isn't a 2-up to make it happen. No, it just happens, and that's why
24 inches too, which is like good range.
Yeah, good range, absolutely. And I think the problem is it's like, this is like Nas in a Fast and the Furious movie. You don't want to pop it too early, okay? Like your instinct is going to be to hit it when they're castled up at the beginning. But actually, I found it's usually better in round 2 or 3. That's where it's going to do the damage, where they've tried to like sort of group valuable things into place. Some things have gotten damaged. You're able to wound some stuff through some of the methods you've talked about, and now this can potentially finish off, as you mentioned. Like this can clear out some foot heroes, right? God forbid you ever have like you do overinvest in heroes and have 2 of these guys in the list or something nuts, because that actually does get real scary real fast.
You start going full Comet Fall, bring like 3 of these guys, the Everblaze Comet, and then Celestin Prime.
The full trap list. Yes, exactly. It seems like such a good idea on paper. But I love it, and I actually do love it in the season for the reason that you said. So because there's a lot of little wizards who are going to be very protected normally, like they're going to be trying to run around, trying to be little Andoran locuses being untargetable by shooting at farther than 12 inches, but the banner going to get you. You just got to make sure it's combined with enough stuff that like it will take them out. You don't want to sit there and give them a chance to heal back up, basically. So
yeah, like you blow it too early and they just heroic recovery for 2 or 3 turns straight, and you're like, oh, okay, I wasted 120 points.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Cool. Very good. All right. Let's move on from leaders. I know it's a lot of the book. Heroes is let's be honest, too much of this book. Okay. 39 War Scrolls is too many heroes. We don't need a couple. We don't need them.
Let me just get an up or down from Dylan, since he's got Kitty Caters. Astrea Soulbright. Somebody asked about Astrea in the chat.
It's a fun additional question.
I like Astrea, but God, she's so hard to use. Her spell, like -1 to hit bubble, sounds absolutely insanely bonkers, but it's got a 6-inch range, and you can only do it in your hero phase because it's a spell. And she's so hard to use. The +1 to save is only in combat phase, so it doesn't help with shooting or anything like that. And she is, like we talked about earlier, she is a unique hero that is going to get outperformed value-wise by other units. So I like her, but you have to really position her perfectly to actually get value out of her.
Right on.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about overrated units. So now, Tyler, traps and overrated units. Now's the time where you can mention the ballistae, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that was just an obvious one. There's not a lot to say about it. I mean, the War Scroll is an absolute disaster with the point value. They keep dropping it, but yeah. Have you ever tried them, Dylan?
I love the ballista. Let's be clear. I love the model.
Sure.
It's one of my favorite models in Stormcast, and I so wish it was good. I'm almost buying them cheap now in hopes it'll be good next book, because it is so bad.
That's smart play. Yeah. It's gonna be like so amazing next book. Yeah, it's such garbage now.
Yeah. I've done the numbers on like how much damage it does, and like it on average does like as much damage as like the like Gardas and Lord Imperaton shooting, which if you've ever played with those, you know how trash that is.
Right,
like they're just so garbage. Like they will literally do nothing in a game.
The Roman candle is what I call the Lord Imperaton shooting.
Yep.
His little D6 shots. Oh boy.
Speaking of trash and a trap unit, we're here, Vince. Adjudicators with Sky Bolt bows at 200 points. I've had Dylan. Do you want to complain about them? Because God knows I've complained about them every opportunity on this show for a long time.
I told you, Tyler. We'll go 190, and that's perfectly fair.
Sure.
I was gonna say, you guys ever seen the Reaver War Scroll? And you look at that, and you're like, wait, these are the same War Scroll, right? And we get mortal wounds. That seems good. That's why we're 30 points more. And then you realize they get 5 extra dudes, and you're just like, oh,
amazing.
Yeah, it's God. I think I played them a lot at the start of 3.0 because that was the monster meta, and I think they're really good at hunting monsters. These big, high save monsters that don't tend to have very good wards. You can just kind of like pick them off and whittle them down. I think against basically everything else, you feel terrible shooting into it. You're just like, this is not enough damage. 30 more points, I could get raptors and actually kill stuff.
Yeah, we were 2 of the rare ethical Stormcast players running 10 Judicators when we had Thunderbolt Volley with a reinforced unit. You know, very reasonable. These other jokers like Mergonk and other less
Mergonk
less
killed it for us all.
Less savory types out there. Yeah, running 6 long strikes. So no, it's a horrific unit right now at 200 points. I'm glad you agree, Vince. We can move on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yes, I mean, it's a problem. It's really funny because of how they've swung in value over the time. Let me give this answer as we leave Judicators behind, which is to say, I wish more shooting in AOS was on that kind of a points level. That's how it's how shooting should be pointed. That's what I'll say.
Unfortunately, we're the example that gets
only
high
one
and
army
dry.
seems to be playing by the rules here. Everybody else is just over here going nuts.
Caught holding the bag.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to get lost in that. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but we've had that debate before. I think you're still putting more value on shooting than I am, particularly in the game today, right? Where we now have this new look out, sir. Long strikes are no longer just picking off little heroes, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that given all of the sort of systematic changes that have happened around it, the pressure on that has lessened. That's totally fair. Like, a lot of things have occurred into the ecosystem over the course of 3.0 that have weakened the overall efficacy of shooting, whether we're talking about the ability to protect heroes in many of these seasons, including the current one, whether we're talking about the not only the initial introduction of rally, but then also the proliferation of, high numbers of rallies, of regenerating units, like units that can self-regenerate like quite efficiently and effectively, units that like can self-heal quite easily when they're heroes, right? Restoring something like 6 wounds every combat phase. Certainly the ground has shifted from, say, the end of 2.0 to now as to the overall just like efficiency of what shooting is going to buy you, right? So I do certainly
on
agree
that,
with that
point, I think that is another big reason why I like Judicators more at the beginning than now, because I feel like so much of the big shooting you see now, like Slanesh and like Deepkin to a lesser extent, they just kill the unit, and so they don't get to rally, they don't get to come back, they just full blow the unit out with volume shooting, while Judicators can't do that. Like, you have to chip them down over the course of the game, and that's when this stuff, like this healing, this rally, all that, just hurts them so much more than it hurts the other units that can just kill shit.
I mean, attrition in general has not been a strong play for a lot of 3.0, and it's only gotten worse and worse, frankly, to be fair.
Yeah, that was the one thing we didn't talk about. I don't remember doing in our GHB review, just because I was thinking about it in the following weeks, right, is that I don't think we emphasized enough. Personally, I don't know to what degree you're feeling this, but one of my main concerns right now with the ecosystem, the state of the game, is the state of replenishment, recursion, bringing stuff back, OBR, Soul Blight, etc. Like, that's like, to me, one of the obvious potential systemic issues right now that we've got going on with some of these things.
Agreed, but let's stay on their Stormcast traps and overrated. Okay, so I wanna ask some. There's one we didn't mention yet, which is just prosecutors. We can just move that to the side. I had a lot of.
They charge 3d6. That's all that matters.
I had a lot of hope for them at the beginning of the launch of third. I really did, as like an interesting mobile chaff unit, as like because they could split up so far apart, because they could sort of dominate a lot of board space and hedge out. Like they offer an interesting amount of board control with relatively small bases, just because of their little 3-inch touch and tips spread out and stuff like that. And I thought, hey, you know, the ones with the javelins have a 3-up save. Maybe they'll get there. Maybe they'll be good enough. You know, so on and so forth. They were not. It makes me sad, because I really, it's like the coolest unit, right? Like these cool Stormcast with wings. They're so awesome looking, and they've never been good. Maybe there's like 5 minutes in 1.0, but like
I think Magonk played them once at a big tournament and did well.
It's really
they were a bubble unit in my mind early on in third edition for an Elite Shell soaker. They would soak up an Elite Shell. Sure. That was about it.
Okay,
there's just too many points for that.
Exactly. That's ultimately what it always comes down to. Like, those things should be, I'm gonna be honest, they should just be cheap as chips, right? They're just not worth anything more. Like, if they're ever gonna show up, they're gonna have to just be cheap as all get out. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of interesting pieces here and get your hot takes on these. Are they potential traps? Let's talk about that chariot. Got mentioned earlier. How are we feeling on the chariot?
I think the chariot is solidly fine. I don't think it's like a crazy piece. I don't think I ever see a chariot in a list and I'm like, this needs to come out. Like, I think a chariot it's 12 wounds on a 3-up save, and it's 160 points now, I think. So like it covers a lot of space and has good wound density. It moves 12, so you can get around the board at the end of the game really fast. On impact, it can actually deal some decent damage and kind of clear out some chaff units. But it's not a very reliable piece because it's not elite, so it can't issue commands, which is a huge problem with the unit.
That's a big issue that I found,
So you miss that charge, you just kind of say, okay, go next.
Right.
Because I wanted to use it as an independent operator, but then you're not issuing it. It's not taking commands. So that was frustrating. You have to power pair it with something. And that I tried it. It wasn't working for me. I've seen some lists that are spamming them, and one of the Joels over there, somewhere in the world, one of the Joels is as usual doing interesting things with Stormcast. And so I've seen some people get some work done. I played a game against Laron where he had 6 of the things.
Oh god, I remember that list.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like
that was the meme list I alluded to earlier. It was 5 Knight Heralders, 5 chariots, and a bunch of crossbow duties. You just not a good list, but entertaining.
So they don't get there for me personally.
I think they're close.
That's probably it. I think that my honest problem is the elite thing breaks it for me. I don't think it's probably a bad unit, but it doesn't do what I want it to do. I think there's a fundamental misalignment with the role. I think it probably could be used by a better player than me in interesting ways, especially in multiples, but I have no desire to take multiples of the thing, is what it comes down to. And one of them just ends up annoying me more than it ends up helping me. Like, I charge in somewhere, I do some mortals, I want to be able to all-out defense, and I'm like, oh, there's no one nearby. I just think, I just think if it would fundamentally change my experience of the thing if they just put the word elite on there. That's what I'll say.
It would be so much better. I don't think it would need a point change. I don't think it would break the game or anything like that. No. Just put elite on it, and I would love it. I frequently think about putting 1 to 2 in a list, and it's always the first thing to cut. It's it's the 61st card for people who play Magic or Pokemon or other TCGs.
Love that. It's such a good analogy. And people in the chat said the Vanguard Battalion can help with the non-elite thing, and I'm like, I'm not throwing good money after bad. if a unit doesn't, I don't like Stormcast. To me, is in the situation where it's like you got to be playing with your best in class pieces, filling in your roles to hang in the current meta. And I think the results from the last weekend's rounds of events certainly bear that out to some degree. Was not a great weekend for Stormcast. Okay. There's a couple of people who went 3-2 and they were like the kings of Stormcast over the weekend. So, to me, like trying to take a subpar piece and then throw good money after bad to say like, let's try to make this subpar thing work average. That doesn't work for me. That just doesn't work. I want best in class performers all around.
And it's really, at least in my mind, it's really about getting the all-out defense so that it can actually function as a pinning piece that you're wanting it often to function as.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily about the reroll charge or auto run, in my mind.
Yep.
But yeah.
Okay. Any other traps or overrated units we want to talk about before we move on to the good guys, the good stuff, them goods? Tyler, anything else you wanted to hit on?
Well, so this is one that Dylan and I agree on. Now, I have not played these much personally because, again, Special Snowflake Syndrome refused to play Long Strikes and Fulminators for the longest time. I've got 3 Long Strikes in my list. I need a t-shirt. It's only 3. It's fine. So, Fulminators. I have consistently been underwhelmed by Fulminators. I get the idea of Fulminators. I did try them out a little bit. I found it to be challenging to execute the delivery of them, to actually get them in at the right time. There's a lot of ways in this game where things can get interrupted. A lot of ways. And, so Dylan, what's your overall thoughts on Fulminators?
So I think Fulminators have been power crept out of being meta, pretty straightforwardly. I think their points have not come down. A lot of other points have come down. And so the Fulminators' biggest advantage before was that they were the most efficient unit in the book, damage-wise, on the charge, of course. They would just be like, I spent 240 points on this unit, and it just killed a Gargant or whatever. And you just felt great about it. But like you said, people are getting more used to Fulminators. They know what they do. They know that if you stop them, they get real bad. And there's also a lot more -1 to hit, -1 to wound kind of floating around with like Khorne and Slanesh and all that stuff. And that destroys Fulminators. They need to be as close to 2s and 2s as you can possibly be with them. Anything else, and they really start hating themselves. And so they're just like
-2 rend is not what, obviously it's not what it used to be either in this game. And I mean, obviously there's Hoarfrost out there. Maybe, I mean, you should not be relying on getting Hoarfrost off if you're playing Stormcast. So, but Vince, any take on the Fulmies?
They should come down. Like, they would be fine if they would come down to join their brethren, because right now I think they are overcosted for what you get out of them in the average game. They're not worth 240 anymore. This is the objective sort of points estimation we were talking about at the beginning, right? I think at the launch of 3.0, they were absolutely probably worth 240 points. They could deliver you 240 points of value. I think right now you'd be lucky to get 200, 210 out of them, is my honest answer. I do think they're still good. They're good. Like, the bones of the thing is good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just overcosted. That's it.
Right. This is a nice segue to another unit that I think is.
Let's use this. Yep. Hold on. Let's use this to segue into some winners. Okay. We'll flip this right on its nose.
Sure.
Let's use this to flip right over into winners and hidden gems. Okay.
Cats.
Because sure.
Right.
Well, I was gonna stay on the Dracothian Guard tip.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're good too.
And I was gonna swing our journey from Fulminators over to Tempesters. So which I do rate. How we all rating? How we all rating Tempesters? We think they're a winner now. This is a gem.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. For those who aren't initiated, somebody. Tyler or Dylan, Dylan, go ahead. Sell me on the Tempesters. Why do we like them so much?
So Tempesters are what Judicators wish they were.
Sure.
They're the crossbow Dracoths, and so there's 6 wounds each, 2 in a unit, 3 up save, and they have exploding hits on their crossbow. So they get 3 attacks each, 3s, -1 for 1, that explodes. And so you put like an all-out attack on these guys, and you get like pretty consistently like 8 to 10 like rend 1, damage 1 hits onto
We
stuff.
should say that the exploding is not. He didn't say exploding 6s.
Yeah, just explodes.
Just super clear
Right.
here. It's exploding hits. So every hit
Mhm.
is 2 hits. That's going to be important for people who might not be as familiar with Stormcast. Yes.
Yeah.
Hit
And
once
then they
or
have the
twice.
mortal wound breath too, and so like if you are like having to shoot into like really high armor stuff, like you just have mortal wounds too. And they have good melee, like especially for a shooting unit. They have good move, like they're just such a good all around unit, and so good into big volumes of wounds, like the zombies and the skeletons and the
squig
squigs and all that
other
stuff.
associated squig related nonsense. Yes.
Yeah, like they're so good into that kind of stuff, and they're an independent operator, like more so than I think any other unit in the book. Like they just go out and do their thing and do it well.
Totally agree. They also work. I mean, obviously, it should go without saying that because of their ranges, they're great in scions, whether they happen to be starting up or down. So they're just very useful because of their combination of speed and that decent range, giving them a nice 22-inch threat. It's just solid all over the board. Completely agree. Like Tempesters are absolutely top of the heap, absolute gem for me. 210 points for them is fantastic right now. Love them, love them, love them. Yeah, I'm here for them hardcore. So I think that's going to get a big thumbs up from all of us. Now, you wanted to get there. You wanted the best. You got the cats. Let's talk about kitty caters. All right. I'm still not sure I'm in there. I want to love kitty caters. Quick story. We're gonna have quick fun story time with Vince. I believe the first public facing game that ever featured kitty caters was played by me. Okay? Because at Warhammer Fest, where 2.0 launched, I played against Byron on the launch weekend there. Okay? And it was the first time they showed those models, and we played an actual battle that people were recording, right? So we played on camera for the launch of 2.0 on like that Saturday morning or whatever. And I got handed some ridiculous Phoenix Guard Cities of Sigmar nonsense. Okay? And Byron got handed a full army of kitty caters that someone had painted up in advance for the launch. And this was a classic White Dwarf battle report trap, right? Where the new thing that was introduced got to stomp all over me. And I got run over sideways by these kitty caters. I mean, it was awful. Okay. Now, so I am deeply scarred on these things. I wanna I wanna hate them. So because they wounded me, you understand? They wounded me.
They do that.
But yes, now story time complete. Sell us on kitty caters in the modern meta.
Okay, so I think the closest comparison is these are Fulminators new and improved. I think they fill an extremely similar role in that they want to charge and blow stuff up and be this fast cavalry unit, but I think they have so many like layers of buffs that you can put on them. So I think they're one of, if not the best, like unit to be buffed in like possibly all of Age of Sigmar and certainly in Stormcast, because they just have so many things that go so well for them. We briefly touched on it earlier, but Hoarfrost is obviously an extremely strong spell that a lot of people are going to try and stop this season. And I think Hoarfrost is absolutely nuts bonkers on these guys if you do get it off, which I think they are also a better receiving target than most because they can be outside of unbind range due to the Lauchin shenanigans you can do with them.
Right. And you're probably running Grand Staves because they're at 2 damage and you're trying to get the Rends on the Grand Staves. Yeah, 3 attacks, 3 threes, no Rend, but get Hoarfrost and 2 damage. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So like the idea is like you kind of, so for those of you who haven't seen this very finicky, mathematically correct setup, you place all 6 evocators in this circle around each other with a perfect spot in the middle, like a donut, to put Lauchin in. and then Lauchen can move the whole thing 18 inches in your hero phase, and then the cats can move another 12 inches after that. And so you get this massive threat range on the board, and you just set up so all your buffs go on them outside of unbind range. And so your opponent, unless you're playing Seraphon, of course, just can't interact with it. And you're just hoping to not fail the 6-up that Lauchen is. And so you usually save your primal dice for that if you need to. And then you put the +1 to wound on them, you put Hoarfrost on them, you put Castellant shields on them, and you just send this big juiced up unit forward and just destroy stuff.
Nice. The having them move around with Mr. Soulseeker, with a ferryman, with Lauchen, with Lunchbox, is very funny. Lunch rhymes with lunch. This opens up an entirely new avenue of I remember what the rest of the word is. I'm sorry. It's great. At any rate, yes, it's lunchtime for sure. Okay, so Tyler, how are you feeling about Kitty Caters in this season? About our somebody asked. I should watch our use of these cutesy names. Evocators on Celestial Draco Legions. I'm sorry.
Right? Yeah, we haven't actually said the name yet, have we?
Yeah, I've not tried them personally, but I think Dylan is onto something. I'm in on paper. Would love to actually give it a shot, but yeah, I feel like it has real gas this season, and yeah. What do you think about the ones on foot?
Oh God! So this is actually a pretty interesting comparison. So the ones on foot and comparing them to the ones on the mount. Okay, so they're a 20-point difference. Sorry, they're a 20-point difference between them. And the ones on mount, the riders have the exact same profile as the foot guys. And so you're essentially getting 2 riders for 3 of the mounts. And the mounts are better than the riders. And the Mortal Wound jazz hand things at the end is 9 dice versus 10 dice. And so you're essentially paying 20 points for an extra profile of attacks, the mount attack. And the 12-inch move, and they're the same number of wounds. And so I think just the comparison between them is just laughable. I think the fact that the foot ones are still 220 while the cats are 240 is horrendous internal balance.
I'm with that.
Seems reasonable.
I'm completely with that read. Honestly, you could have stopped at the movement, and
sure.
And you would have sold me for the 20 points. That's the issue, right? It's 20 points, here's the move difference for basically the same unit. I'm like, well, obviously I'm going to pay the 20 points, right? It's not that all the rest of your points were wrong. You were dead on.
Right, it just keeps getting more.
Right, exactly. Just we could have stopped there, and I was already in the mix, right? Okay, yeah. Tyler, who else? Go for it.
Oh yeah. Well, I was just going to say, Murgok pointed out, just to say, the Celestial Lightning arc, right? Probably a lot of people are familiar with it because we saw a lot of evocators early on in 2.0. But you roll 3 dice, as Dylan said. So base unit, you're 9 dice, 4 ups each mortal wound, but it's got a 3-inch reach, and it happens immediately after they attack. So yeah, it's a way that you can take out heroes, small heroes, for example, potentially in particular. But yeah, it's just extra great damage. You made the point about how it, mortal wounds on top of all the dice that they're putting out with some rend. It's really nice.
And after combat is so huge too, because you can go in and I played a game against Slaves to Darkness, where I went in and the cats killed a whole bunch of Chosen, and I was like, if they don't kill enough, I can zap the Chosen afterwards. But if they do kill enough, I can just zap something in the back. And I don't have to worry about making the decision of splitting before attacking. I can just see what the attack did and then make the decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other hidden gems? Is that what are we on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, other hidden gems. We'll stay in the units. We're gonna stick away from leaders for the moment, or heroes, right, as it were. Who else you rating here?
Yeah. Well, so I still don't see many people playing Vigilors. I've talked about them a little bit on the show. They have gone down in points twice, so they're now at 150. They started out at 200, something crazy.
195, I think.
195. I've been getting a lot of games in with them. Shout out to my friend Dan. He was the one that turned me on to them. I like them a lot. So they match my personal play style. So a few thoughts with them. So they have an 18-inch range. They have 2 shots each. You're putting out 11 shots plus 1 for the champ. 3s and 3s minus 1 damage. Okay, so nothing too crazy to write home about. Obviously, the highlight is the marker lighting that they do. So if they do damage to an enemy unit, you get +1 hit for the rest of that turn, melee and shooting. So again, leaning into the combo damage plays with Stormcast, that's been quite nice. I like the 2 units because it allows me to potentially spread that out. You could potentially, try to get greedy and put shots into 2 different units if you want to have the +1 hit against 2 different units, right? The 18-inch range, that's pretty solid. I've liked them with these battle tactics this year, so they can be nice to where, let's take surround and destroy, where you're having to, right, have 3 board edges with units. Well, they've got some ranged output, so it's not Vanquishers or Liberators just sitting on their thumbs doing nothing in a wholly within 6 of a board edge. So that's been nice. It's a way of getting some more ranged output without playing the obvious pieces. That is getting there for me. I've been doing a lot of Knight Draconis with Luckstone, who does a prime imitation once per game. Auto charges 12. That combo damages well with the Vigilors. It helps, overcome minuses to hit on his small number of dice, 5 attacks and 4 attacks from the dragon. So it's a lot, like, I could talk for 15 minutes about Vigilors. It's a lot of nuance with how you can play them, and I think get a lot out of them that, yeah, I really wish more people would try them.
Yeah, okay. Good defense. Good defense of them. I'm willing to back that. I think this is another one of those units that when we first reviewed the book, right, and they were at like 195. Yeah. One of the things we said at that time, I mean, I'm pretty sure, again, I don't have a photographic memory of everything, but I believe our stance was these are good, but they are horrendously overcosted. Right?
Yes.
Like that utility is really fascinating, but man, are they too expensive. I feel like at 150 we're getting there. We're in a place where I'm like, okay, I have to at least give these a try now. Right? Yeah. Because they weren't. I mean, look, we all know 195 was dead in the water there, or 190, or whatever that crazy original points value of them was. It was nonsense. Okay.
Yeah.
But like, because of that extra utility, they are just some extra damage. I agree with all your points. So yeah, I'm with you.
I haven't. Ramon is making the CP point, the command point. That's another way, right? That I can offset my low command point issue. That it allows me to lean into other elements that would otherwise not be on the table, especially all out defense. Like getting very greedy with that. Like, okay, I want all out defense, shooting phase, and combat phase, and I can do that consistently. Things like that. Or I'm gonna reroll a charge, or I'm gonna auto run. Yeah, it frees up a lot.
Yep, absolutely. All right. I mean, we haven't talked about these guys yet, but we mentioned them earlier. I want to get these guys out on the table and talk about them. Can we talk about Quest or Soulsworn? Can we have this discussion? Dylan, you want to introduce everybody to these guys, because this is one of those things. Like, I really, as an almost rule, I kind of hate this, that these guys are so useful, that I'm going to come down on the positive on these guys, because basically every other thing like this, Reed, Underworlds type, Warcry type thing, right? Whatever, these ancillary units that get injected into the game, right? 9 out of 10 of them are complete trash, and you never need to learn them or look at them, right? That's the rules. And then every so often,
they're getting better. But I
was gonna say, we got 2 winners in the same box for this one. I think the Flesh Eater one's actually probably right now.
You're probably not wrong there, but that's fair. The Flesh Eater one's really good. Well, I'm more. I am admittedly leaning on the total history of all of these things.
Yeah. Historically, they're not good.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 of them are bad. I will stand behind that number. Right? Okay. So yes, explain the Quest or Soulsworn. Dylan, take us away through these boys.
Yeah, so Quest or Soulsworn, I think, are definition independent operator. They're a 6-man unit, which is kind of interesting. New coherency, they like. They're 3-up save, 3 wounds apiece. So you got 18 wounds on a 3-up save for 230 points, which is above rate for Stormcast. I think that's like one of the better 3-up save wound efficiency per points we have in the book, maybe the best. And they got a pretty good melee profile. They have the Chosen profile. For those who don't know, it's 3 attacks, 3s, -1 for 2 damage.
2-inch reach.
Yes, 2-inch reach.
Well, 2-inch reach.
Definitely
really nice.
relevant.
Yeah.
And once per game, they can translocate themselves in the hero phase. They just get to pick themselves up and put them anywhere on the battlefield 9 inches away from stuff. Yep. And most importantly, they count as 3 per model on objectives that are wholly outside of your territory.
Yep.
So these guys are the upgraded chariot, I think. I think these guys fill a rather similar role as the chariot, but do it so much better.
I'll believe that. I completely believe that.
How so? Just to expand on that, how so?
Yeah, so these guys they have a champion, so they can issue themselves commands. They can trade and kill stuff, and they can hold an objective by themselves, because what I usually found, so I've played with them a few times now. I found that what I'll usually do is I'll kind of keep them in like the screen line, like your line of dudes in front protecting all your stuff early in the game, and they'll probably not do a whole lot, maybe hold a point, maybe protect your hero or whatever. But then once your opponent starts to move away from their territory, they can just zip back there, and suddenly they're a chosen level threat that your opponent needs to go deal with, and they usually aren't in position to ever do that. And so sometimes these guys can just take an objective for the entire game, because like they are hard to kill. 18 wounds on a 3-up save. They can issue themselves all out defense. Like they count as 18 models on the objective. Like they're not going anywhere. They can just kind of fight stuff, and like if you do get in certain positions, you can kind of push them off the objective and start threatening backline with them too. And so I just think they do a lot. They are 230 points, which is a really competitive price bracket in this army. You're like giving up Raptors for these guys is usually the argument that the choice that I find myself making. But they do a lot. I think they are absolutely playable, and in some list they are the best choice.
I actually think your chariot comparison's dead on, because like consider that here's some of the things. It's funny too when you look at this, goes back to the earlier point I made, because this is 18 wounds on a 3-up save for 230 points, as opposed to the monsters we were talking about, which are 18 wounds on a 3-up save for like 500 points, right, or something like that. Sure. And the difference there is so notable, right? Like it's, I mean, duh, but like, but it's. But I really mean it. It's super important. And the chariot comparison, the chariot's neat. Yeah, it can pin, it can do these things, but like, what's it ultimately counting as? 2. It's 2, right? It's 2 models. That's what it counts toward an objective, right? These guys rock up on most objectives as 18. Right? Like that is a huge difference in efficacy, right? Because not only can they get there and potentially pin, they can take. Right? They can take it right out from under many units with just even like moderate casualties. They're often just taking it directly away. And the fact that, they have that once a game, bloop, bloop. Fantastic. Exactly the way I want to do it. I don't want to take another hero to do it, like we talked about earlier with with our standard boy, with the Vexilor. But built into the unit's a completely different play, if they're already delivering the value, right? Which I think they are. Yeah, I think these guys are an absolute hidden gem. I mean, I'm sure many of the Stormcast players already know, but for the rest of the people, like or maybe people thinking about Stormcast, like absolutely, these guys are, in my mind, just straight fire right now. They're one of the better units in the entire army, like just straight up.
Yeah, 100%. So a couple of other things. I mean, they're addressing a critical need, which is bodies on objective, helping us with primary scoring with an elite army. The Imperatant is great with them to give them the 7 on the charge. Obviously, we can still benefit from Battle Mage. We will see with the new Cities of Sigmar book. Whether that's going to remain the same with Wild Form giving us +2 to charge.
I'm sure it won't. I would write that
I was
off.
gonna say I would not hold your breath.
Right.
Yeah,
But
like,
as of right now,
if anything says step 1, use a cities thing,
right.
fire that off the roof right now. That is not a thing.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. But Imperatent is great with them. So yeah, I've tried them out once so far. As Dylan said, you have them on the board, say hit them with a Castellan shield. You don't even necessarily, I mean, because
they're
of the
fine without
built-in,
it too.
and they've been fine without it, but just the way that they can take buffs. If you have the traditional Relictor, either Knight or Lord with Translocation, you can hit them with Translocation and then maintain their built-in Translocation to use that later. So they've got something that almost no other unit has, right? Which is a way to do 2 hops. The Lord or Knight Relictor hop, and then the hop after that. That's incredible board play with this guy. Yeah, it's just an extraordinary unit. Yeah, you guys are 100% right.
Yep. All right. So there you go. We all agree definitely on the hotness of these guys. I wanna leave. We need to keep moving. We've got a lot more to cover in this, and we have been going for a while. But I think there's one more important discussion to have in units before we then talk about some winter heroes. We'll cover some hidden gem and winter heroes. But I do want to have this discussion real quick around Battle Line and Redeemer models in general. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this speaks to what you were talking about earlier, Tyler. We all talked about this a little before the show, I think. Of like, I think people undercount just having Redeemer models, the value of having screens, of having these extra bodies, and having this stuff. Like, I have always been a fan of Vindictors for myself. They've always been where I fall, but other people might like Liberators more. I think it just depends on the list and your points and kind of what you're overall aiming at. I think either can be completely viable and are winners in my mind. They're to me almost an invaluable part of every list I've ever built, and just like a core MVP in most games. And I just wondered if you both had the same feeling or not. Dylan, I'll go over to you first.
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a ton of different ways you can build Stormcast. And I think unless you're playing the way that's like, my opponent isn't going to have an army by turn 2, and if that plan doesn't work, I lose, and just kind of accept that game plan, I think you need to have at least 1 squad of Redeemers, probably 2. They are screens. They can trade with other chaff reasonably well because they do have good saves, and Sequitors do put out pretty good damage. They're getting to the point where, like, I never feel bad about taking them. And oftentimes in list, I'll even go up to like 4, maybe even 5 battle line slots because I just want these guys in there as screens. Call for aid, if you don't have a better holy command to take, is just pure value. And so you're just like, hey, you need to come back. And I've call for aided onto objectives to take them before multiple times. And so it's like they kill this unit and they're like, okay, we have this objective. And they're like, nope, call for aid. This objective's mine now because you killed my unit in your turn.
Right.
And Soul Blight showed us exactly how oppressive that can be. So,
yeah,
agreed on all counts. I actually lost a battle tactic once because I accidentally killed my opponent was playing Stormcast and I wasn't thinking, and I left a rear point undefended. It was like it was the super automatic battle tactic that was like, just hold this point for the round or something, whatever that one was 2 seasons ago. And I just like had it way back buried in the line and moved everybody away from it, wasn't thinking. And then I went up and just smashed his unit of Liberators, and he was like, I call for aid, and he sent him up on my thing, and I lost the battle tactic, and I was like,
it's like, no.
Good Lord. I am a moron. Like, losing the auto battle tactic. So yeah, it can happen, right? Absolutely. I just think I actually always favored call for aid in my list just because I liked being able to regen the unit. I was always a two units of Vindictors with call for aid. It gave you good flexibility. I'm with it. Tyler?
Yeah. Agree with everything you guys said. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Nothing more to add. They're critical.
Cool. Fair enough. Let's talk our winners. Hero winners and hidden gems. Who are our winners? Dylan, we'll start with you. Let's just get some picks on the floor here. Who are we taking?
Lord Castellan, Lord Relictor, I think are nigh auto includes in this army right now. Arcane Tome keeps getting nerfed, and Castellan loves it. He keeps getting indirectly buffed because of the nerfs to all of our artifacts. And so I think unless you have somebody else to take an artifact, like an Imperator or a Draconis with Luckstone, like Tyler was saying, I think you have to take a Castellan. Like, him with Arcane Tome is like one of the only options for artifacts I feel Stormcast has. And then Relictor is just like Translocate is busted. It's why Stormcast are still a moderately competitive army. Unless you have really good reasons not to take it, you should always take it.
Yep. Agree on both of these selections. Tyler, any disagreement on both of these selections?
Yeah, makes sense. The Knight of Cantor obviously is high on the board this season. The auto unbinds, we've already talked a lot about the Incantor in prior shows. So yeah, you're going to see that one or
Everybody's
two.
favorite new ally. Yes, the Incantors have been shipped out in mass from Azer down to every other Order army.
Yeah. Dylan mentioned the Nitroconus with Luckstone. I have been a little surprised at the lack of that getting play. That has just been an extraordinary piece for me in a lot of my games. As combo damage play is ongoing threat, either it's on the board, buff up with Castellant, maybe Mystic Shield on top, Hoarfrost if I can get whatever. Just taking as many buffs as possible, and then it's 24-inch threat range from there. Or it's deep striking, and I'm biding my time, round 2, round 3, looking to set up combo damage with Vigilors, long strikes. It asks questions that are sometimes difficult to answer from your opponent, and with the very good output that piece has. Let's see what else. Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger. I think Dylan, we might have a difference of opinion on this.
I am super low on the Griff Charger.
Okay. Yeah.
I see what it's doing. I see it's kind of jumping around the board, providing support. Being a wizard and being a 3-up save, 8 wound hero is good. But I just it's 170 points. Think about that. Surely there's 60 points in your list you can cut somewhere to replace it with a Quester Soulsworn. I think it's one of those units that I think just gets trumped by the job it wants to do by other stuff too much.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, push come to shove, want to put it on my true winners list. So I'm cheating a little bit here. I do just want to give it a shout out for purposes of spellcasting savant, because boy, if you want a way to get a grand strategy with this army, I do think that's a pretty sound choice, going Lord Arcanum and Grip Charger, as opposed to, let's say, a Knight Incantor as your general with Praetors, 3 or 6 Praetors to help keep that general alive. Grand strategies, in my opinion, are going to be a little challenging. I'd love to hear if there's differences of opinion about that with Stormcast this season. They've always been rather challenging for us. Well, that is, we had Take What's Theirs, which was the thing that everybody played as Stormcast. Other than that, they were challenging for us.
Sure.
So I think it's interesting in that regard. I did play the Lord Arcanum Grip Charger about 5 games. I'm a little less high on it than I was at the time, but I still think it's a notable pick that I don't see a whole lot. Let's see, as far as units, so let's see. We've talked about Battleline, Rest, Tempestors,
I think it's just heroes. Oh, we
want to touch on Griffhounds?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, long story short, these things love 6-man coherency more than most things. They become a really, really good screen.
Yes.
They're 12 wounds, no save, but they don't really die to incidental damage. The Roman candle kind of hero shooting stuff that you were talking about doesn't kill them. And they cover a big area of the board. They give you shooting benefits if they're trying to deep strike on you. And they're 90 points, and they can get to objectives. They can bounce out of combat. I think there's just a lot of upside to them that people aren't really looking at because they were so bad with 5-man coherency.
That's a good point. The coherency change is big. All right, I want to stick on heroes for a second because I want to talk about one of my winners. I'm not hearing discussed here, but he's definitely he's still making my list. He's still making my list, and this is where we're going to have a difference of opinion. I'm ready. Here we go, and that is the man himself, the guy who was on the original screen. That is Bastion Carthalos. Man, I have feelings for him. That's fine. I think he's good. Now, look, I will openly admit, okay, so just back off. I will openly admit that at 300 points, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I can't defend those points. Okay, I really can't. But I still think he's good. Do I believe, do I think he should be cheaper? Yes. Absolutely. Okay. But I'm going to back this guy. And the reason I back this guy is because I love everything about him in what he does. I love he's relatively tough at 8 wounds, 3 up, 4 up. Okay. I mean, like all the good utility. He packs enough utility in there that I'm still willing to overpay for him. That's what it comes down to. Okay. Like, I agree with everybody that he's too much. I know, folks. That's why I started it. And also, people, 220, get out of here. You're out of your mind.
220? Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Stormkeep, first of all, never trust Morgonk or Stormkeep to point anything inside.
Yeah.
Ever. Okay? You guys, we take your vote and then a sane person's vote, average them out, and we'll get to the right number. I love you guys, but you are way too deep in it. You are too hard of stands, okay? Like, I wouldn't go to a Swiftie and ask who the best recording artist is of all time, right? Like, I know what their vote already is. So, like, basically, here's my argument. My argument is this. If you build your list, and it's, like, often 30 or 40 points under, which a lot of the lists we'll look at today when we look are going to end up around 1960, 1970, as Stormcast lists often are. Okay? Right? Then, instead of getting a Triumph, I'm spending my Triumph points on Bastion. That's how I look at it. Okay? Because if he was like 260, which is probably where he should be, right? I would be unreserved in my praise for him, right? So to me, I'm just trading a Triumph for Bastion. That's it. That's all it is. Like, I'm going to go best in class for all the stuff we've described for the rest. And then this guy, and like, okay, I have a pet 40 points. Like, all right, what else was I buying for 40 points? Okay. Like, I love everything about this dude. Let me also say, in the current season, there are some battle reports, not a ton, but some battle plans, where I really love his Swippy swap people at the beginning of the game ability. There's a couple little long tail or unusual L shapes that show up in some of these. A couple of the one where you can be touching. Where you can touch tips, right?
Yep.
Battle plans like that, I really love his like D3 reset at the beginning. I think it's super high value in those scenarios.
A friend of mine called me out with that one game a few weeks ago. Yeah, it was like 4 dragons. I just wasn't thinking about it. That he relocated to a completely other side, and it totally caught me out.
Yeah. He can still hit hard. Yes, he's only Ren 2, which is sometimes swingy, but he is still 4 damage. He marches across the board and and effectively is like adding some amount of utility the entire time until he gets there, and then just handles generally whatever he needs to handle. He's a very, like, if people want to remove him, they do have to dedicate significant resources to remove this thing. He doesn't lift easily, right?
Yeah.
And he heals like an absolute hoss once he gets to fighting. So all of that makes me still love the dude. I like him better than all of his sort of competitors in that band, the kind of like 200 to 300 point named hero band, which is where they tend to fall, right? That's which is what's appropriate. Like, that's how those kinds of heroes should be costed. Ultimately, like I said, I do think he's 260, but I would defend him as being completely worth it in my book.
Dylan, have you played him at all?
So I played Bastion a fair few number of times, not like a ton, but maybe like 5 games or so.
Sure.
And I think Bastion is the toolbox for the toolbox army, right? Like, his utility is crazy. Like, it's all about what you can get out of those utility. I think the D3 redeploy at the start of the game is super strong, and people who aren't used to playing against it will absolutely get caught out by it. Like, I have played games before where like I drop my Raptors like on the front lines, and I'm lower drop, so I get to decide who gets to go first.
Right.
And it forces the opponent into the decision of, do I respect these Raptors with their insane threat range turn 1 to just Thunderbolt volley something down, or do I call him on his bluff that he's going to pick him back up? And I think he gives you a lot of those kind of like options in mind games. And so I don't think he's bad. I definitely don't think he's bad. I just think he's too expensive and too against what I like in my play styles, because he's also not a very... like I talked about how the Evocator on Dracolines, they go up, like they get buffs really, really well. and I don't think Bastion like absorbs buffs hardly at all.
No.
He is at his ceiling basically from the get-go.
I agree with that.
And if he can't get into like, or if he's trying to like punch up above his weight class, like he'll get bodied. And so you really got to put him into stuff that he can like handle, like him into hordes, and kind of being able to project his presence outwards is where he wants to be. And that's not going to happen every game. It's happening more now with the current meta we're in. And so I think he's more valuable in this meta than previous ones.
Sure.
But I don't know. He's not how I like to play the game, because he's an expensive unit that doesn't get better. He is what he is. And he got a lot of room to play with, and he's got a lot of tools, but
yeah. I've been just a few thoughts. I haven't played him in a while. I played him a lot last year, Vince. We talked about him last year. I think you probably remember some of my experience with him, right?
So I was playing like crazy last year as well. Yeah,
absolutely. So we were both fans. It was my Thunder Buddies list. So it was Celestin Prime, Bastion, 10 Judicators, 2x5 Liberators, 10 Protectors. So what I liked about that list is that it had 4 threats: Bastion, which maybe that's being a little generous for him, but go with me. Celestin Prime, again, maybe generous in the minds of some people. 10 Protectors, 10 Judicators, and then a decent number of bodies still. So that army was designed to play 5 rounds. I would get down early, and I would play late. Prime always would come on the board round 3 ideally. So Bastion was my Castellan Shield and Mystic Shield ideally, and then translocate him. Now he's going off to a corner, right? He's being a distraction Carnifex. Now some players would ignore him, but I generally found that it's not. Yeah, some games you can get away with quote unquote ignoring him, but it's not as if he's not providing value, as you've laid out here. Yep. He provides value on a number of fronts, and he can do work against Chav, especially, as Dylan noted. And so I would always do that. That was my round 1 play. Okay, they have to respond to that. Round 2 play is the Protectors. Judicators continue to do work. Round 3 play is Prime. If Prime comes in round 3 with 7 attacks, and round 3, round 4, round 5, he was incredible pretty consistently in my games. So that army had a lot of combo damage, right? Because the Protectors... So I found him to work really well. Like, I won a lot of games with that list last year against a lot of tough lists. But I get all of the issues that people have with Bastion, especially, like we're maybe fewer monsters on the table, are not getting as much value of it as Lightning Bolt nowadays. I don't know, but he is a fascinating piece. He's a lot of fun to play, and yeah.
All right.
So gorgeous too. God.
Obviously the model's incredible. All right, so it goes without saying with basically everything in this army. Okay. Let's talk battle tactics for just a moment. I do want to discuss that, and then we're gonna do some lists. We'll move quickly through the lists. But let's talk battle tactics. Tyler, I think you put this list together. So you want to kind of take us through this and what you're thinking. Like, you have this divided into relevant Stormcast battle tactics, what should be your priority tactics in the GHB, and then what are your lower priority tactics. Okay, so take us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Dylan, feel free to push back on any of this if I missed anything. So I just hit what I think are the relevant Stormcast battle tactics for the most part. So, I mean, if you want to run Cities of Sigmar, fine. There's a battle tactic for you, but I'm not considering that, right? There's one on Battle Shock that I'm not considering for the most part. So yeah, it's so bad. Okay, so no challenge too great. Kill any enemy hero with wounds caused by Redeemer melee weapon. Now, that one's going to be, all else equal, pretty tough to execute, right? That's another situation where Vandus and 10 Vindictors is interesting. A little more interesting for weirdos like me that wants to run something like that, right? To try to get a little more mileage out of doing that. But yeah, that's not going to come up a lot, but it'll come up periodically. Have you ever gotten no challenge too great, Dylan?
I've gotten it multiple times.
All right.
I actually think this is the Stormcast tactic I've gotten the most.
Wow, okay.
Mainly because I play Redeemer spam a lot. It's by far my most played list is just running like 30 Redeemers. I think it's one of those battle tactics that like you just kind of like look at like halfway through a game and be like, oh, I can actually get this. Like Sequitors do definitely meaningful damage. They can kill most foot heroes. Vindictors, like with mortal wounds, can usually like grab something out if it's taken previous damage. The other Vanquishers and Liberators probably aren't killing heroes too often.
Sure.
So it's 100% list dependent, like all the Stormcast book tactics are.
Yeah. And again, a running theme with a lot of these things is you got to be thinking about combo damage with Stormcast, kind of aligning, getting your ducks in a row. Like, okay, I'm going to shoot this hero if I'm in range, which is a little more challenging this time, in this season with the 12-inch range limitation now. But yeah, it's going to be a running theme with these things and how you have to think about them. Okay, so Hammer Strike Assault, pick, kill, starting enemy hero with 10 plus wounds and no wounds allocated to it. So that's, again, another one where you want to be looking to set that up. That's come up a fair amount for me personally. So like, again, Nitroconus Luckstone, Long Strike. So the key here is 10 or more wounds, so you're not getting benefit from Lookout Sir. So you can actually target this, with your more than 12-inch away shooting units. Is that one, Dylan, that you've gotten very often, or?
I think this is, like, if we're looking at the Stormcast book tactics, I think this is the best tactic we have, but I also think it's the easiest to just be like, oh, this is not attainable in this game. Because obviously you play against a lot of a list that don't have any heroes with 10 or more wounds. And there's a lot of chip damage in this army, like between like the explosions and like our shooting usually doesn't kill like big stuff, like just outright. And so, like, I feel like that 0 wounds allocated to it is actually extremely relevant. Not even to mention some of the armies that hurt their own big heroes. You're just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I don't get this now.
Yeah, exactly. I will also say it's eminently counterable when you call it.
No, yeah,
right. Like,
absolutely.
Like this is what I'm doing. Cool. Okay, now I'm gonna do
Finest hour.
Yeah, exactly. Just like and bam, right? I mean, like, like it's. Everybody knows what the immediate response is going to be as soon as you pick this thing. That's the problem.
Yeah, I've not found that I go after this one that often for some of the reasons that we're laying out here. Yeah, it can just be at times challenging. I mean, unless you're playing against, I don't know, maybe like there's a Lord of Change and you feel like, all right, it's, like I've got actually a chance. All of the things are aligned here for me to get the 14 or whatever wounds it's at now. That's something with a relatively low save is like a 4-up at least or a 5-up save, right? Which is not that common.
Exactly, that's the problem. Like, I think the major problem is here. There will just be games where this is blank, where this is just text because the relevant target just doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. So now one that I do think is you should see a lot of folks thinking about Draconeth Destruction in their list building. Pick, kill one starting enemy unit with 10 plus models with either Draconeth, Dracoth, or Stardrake attacks. Just attacks. I believe I did that right. I think it can be shooting attacks as well.
Yeah, it can.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So now with the way that this is worded, it means that they have to have 10 plus models at the time of you picking the battle tactic. Again, you're allowed to do combo damage as part of this, right? Whittle them down and then something finishes them off with one of these keywords. So that's why I have a Nitroconus in my list, right? It's also one of the additional benefits potentially of Vandus. Yeah, it's situational, but Vandus has got the Dracoth keyword, right? And so, like, in general, as anybody who goes to a tournament, would say, or at least for the most part, I think when you're writing a list, you got to be thinking first and foremost in my mind about your battle tactics, and like you're trying to line up as many sources of options for you to achieve your battle tactics, and I feel like Stormcast is a huge example of that with a lot of these things. Dylan, have you done Draconeth Destruction much? Have you looked at that one?
Yeah, so I've definitely done it before, and I think these two battle tactics, Draconeth Destruction and Matter of Honor, are a big reason why I think Stormdrake are still good and not nerfed out of the meta. And Dracoth specifically is only on this one. But Tempesters are really, really good at getting this battle tactic.
Yeah.
And so that just increases their stock even more. And like you said, it's just like if you like are considering some of these units, like which one you like, which one you don't like, the battle tactics absolutely will push a unit over the edge for me.
I just want to leave us with it's an absolute travesty that Dracoline isn't on here.
Oh yeah, they'd be too good.
It would be reasonable if there was some battle tactic that mentioned them. This unit, it's things like that really like still agree. Get up in my craw about the design of this book, right?
Yeah.
This like that just reads so terrible with the age of the thing. It's so obvious that they were just like, yeah, sure, these couple new units or whatever, these units, and like, What about all these guys? Whatever.
It's like, that's all the cavalry, right? Are we missing somebody?
Yeah,
Don't
can't be
worry about
missing
it.
anything. We're good. No need to give that a second pass. All right. Anyways, yeah. You mentioned Matter of Honor. Let's talk the GHB tactics, because I think that's where people are going to want to really get some meaty discussion here.
Yeah, Dylan, why don't you take this one? What are your thoughts on how's this list looking to you, and is there ones that you think are more likely to be achieved early or later?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with your list here, like to the nose. I think these 5 are the ones I look at in every game. I think the other 3 I kind of keep in the back of my head, but I don't really go for. I think turn 1, you're almost always going to be doing Intimidate the Invaders or Magical Dominance, depending on the battle plan. If you're far enough away from your opponent that you're out of Unbind range, Magical Dominance needs to be done turn 1, because otherwise they start getting the Primal Dice, they start getting close, and they start shutting off. They only have to unbind 1 spell, and then you're just hosed out of a battle tactic. Yep. And Intimidate the Invaders, like on some battle plans, like where you are closer or something, you just move your stuff up and you just get the tactic.
Yeah. People love giving us Stormcast players first turn. We often have higher drops than 1 drop in our armies. So yeah, Magical Dominance is often a really nice one to plan for.
And then as for the other 3, I think these are kind of your like. You do these in whatever order the game is kind of laid out for you. You mentioned Surround and Destroy really benefits our ranged units, being able to kind of like park them on the edges. Translocate makes this tactic almost always doable, even if not optimal. And then as for the charge ones, I find myself lacking a battle line to charge a lot of the times, because like I run a lot of like low man Redeemer squads that either get into combat or get blown up, and so I have a hard time getting this one. But I see the value.
You know what's battle line? Tempestors, and Tempestors are as well.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
You know what you can run with Tempestors? They're okay.
Is Tempestors the answer to every Stormcast question?
Pretty much. But yeah, no, that's a fair point. So, and you got to be really careful with. I've had some games come up where you kill too much, or you got to be careful that within 3 inches of an enemy unit, people do some tricks with piling and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But yeah,
you kill too much stuff and just fail your tactic because you like tabled your opponent. It's not the like worst feeling, because like you killed a whole bunch of units, but like you don't get your tactic. So
I think you're dead on the 5. I mean, the other one that you just always want to keep a side eye on is obviously Reprisal. If that happens, people will be hunting after your general. That will be happening. Hopefully it doesn't occur. Like, you should be trying, like, your general should survive most games, given the various and sundry things that are going to happen here and how you play the thing. But if it does go south, like, you just want to keep a side eye on that. If the opportunity arises to then, counterpunch that unit, it can be an often easy thing to do so, because they might have had to overextend to get your general based on where your general is going to often tend to be vis-a-vis the rest of your battle lines. So
looking at these battle tactics as a whole, like, to me, I'm curious, because I think this emphasizes what we're going to get into with list building, which is too many lists, having too many hammers, and not enough of the combined arms approach, not a big enough toolbox, where if you want to achieve 5 battle tactics consistently with Stormcast, I think these battle tactics are telling you need to have a nice toolbox. You want to have multiple high mobility or teleporters. You want to have a wizard or 2 to help you get magical dominance. You want to have maybe an aggressive hero for getting led into the maelstrom, with maybe some mobility as well, some good mobility as well. It's like it's this nice mix, I feel like, that pushes us toward more interesting lists to help achieve these things.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Speaking of lists, what a wonderful segue, Tyler. Let's talk lists, everybody. So we got a big selection of lists from tournaments around the world here this most recent week. Tyler went through and pulled a bunch of lists for us. We've also got a list from Dylan and Tyler themselves as well. So what I want to do here is I want to look at each of the list. And Tyler, I was hoping you could kind of like give us your general thoughts on the list, and Dylan, same with you. Like I want I'm going to throw this over to you guys basically. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And talk about where you see as sort of the challenges with the list, or what you like, what you don't like, that sort of thing. So we're starting here with at the Tacoma Open. This is list example number 1. So this is a Knights Excelsior and Scions. Grand Strategies Overshadow. We got a Relictor, High Priest and Translocate, of course. We got a Lord Imperatant with the Mirror Shield. We got a Knight Incantor. We got a Knight Incantor. They both got Merciless Blizzard. We got 6 Annihilators with Meteoric Grandhammers, 3 Annihilators with Shields, 3 Annihilators with Shields, 6 Raptors with Long Strike Crossbows, 3 Raptors with Long Strike Crossbows, and this is wrapped into a Battle Reg and an Entdorian Acolytes for a total drops of 3. All right. So, Stormkeep says all gas, no screens. Tyler, what's your take on it? Yeah, what's your take on this one?
I mean, so that's going to be running theme with some of these lists. Vince mentioned it a little bit ago. It's been a brutal couple of weekends for Stormcast so far, but I think one of the issues, at least in my mind, with a lot of these lists is that, it's often all gas, no screens. The highest at Tacoma had 7 Stormcast players. Out of 96 players was 2-3. There were 3-2-3, 2-1-4, 1-1-3, didn't quite finish, and an 0-5. Just brutal, right? Okay, so this one, I like the double Incantor for reasons that we discussed.
Sure.
I think Hoarfrost. I guess this list isn't really getting a lot of value to Hoarfrost.
It's not using Hoarfrost at all.
Yeah.
And double Merciless Blizzard it's like actually one of the first things that jumped out at me. Like that's betting the farm way too heavy on that thing. Like it's
right.
You have to imagine that they're translocating an Incantor forward and blizzarding, right? Because what else are they doing with
and just
it?
like grabbing all the dice and being like, let's go.
Right, like let's win the game turn 1 or we lose. Is absolutely what this list is.
Yeah.
So, and that very well could have been extremely deliberate, right? And obviously we don't know to what degree folks were wanting to be highly competitive or not, or just go and have a good time. But in terms of, I mean, there's not a lot to say in my mind about this list. It's just if you're trying to do well with Stormcast, this is screaming a lot of things you do not want to do, in my mind, with playing the army right now.
I feel like this is leaning into something, Dylan, that you talked about, which is I'm going to bet the whole farm on can I do all this damage, and the Merciless Blizzard thing just leans into that play, right? You're going to try to bring down your Imperatant guiding. You're trying to have your Annihilators with Grand Hammers come in and smash something, and you're assuming they don't have screens. You're trying to do all the crossbow damage. You've got Thunderbolt Volley. You're trying to hope to pull off all the primal magic dice in the world, Merciless Blizzard, right? And just overwhelm them so much with this huge damage spike at the top of 1 that you're just that they just go, oh my god, and freak and can't recover, right? But that bets so much of the farm on them not having screens, on you getting your spell off, on a lot of things, right? I love a good YOLO build, but but it's so it's so easy for this to fall apart, right? That's the problem.
I think so this list particularly is screaming everything that I see players do with Stormcast that I hate. It is the ultimate sinner list, right? And so the number 1 to me is Knight Relictor. And so you lose out on the consistency of translocation, becomes a 3-up rerolling instead of 2-up. It's a huge hit to your consistency. But in the late game, translocation is usually what you need to win the game. Lord Imperatant with Mirror Shield. I think Mirror Shield is an absolute trap of an artifact. I don't think it's good, especially with the new Lookout, sir. I think it's functionally a dead artifact. Both Knight Incantors having Merciless Blizzard is just crazy, but I appreciate the gumption. Reinforcing the hammers is you're gonna kill what you need to kill with 3 hammers 9 times out of 10. So reinforcing is just wasted points, in my opinion. Going with 3 of the shields, I imagine it's similar. They'd probably drop all 3 units of Annihilators turn 1 just to get the splash damage with the shields and then go for the 9-inch charge. But that's just such a flimsy game plan. Raptors, in this list, you have to put the Raptors down, I think. Because you have to put all 3 Annihilators in the sky. And so because of Scion's rule, being able to have half of the stuff in the sky, you have to have Raptors on the board, I think. Quick math.
You'd have to have probably at least 1 of the Raptors on the board.
Right, which then they die to any kind of counter shooting. And 9 Raptors is just too many. Raptors get their value by surviving, not by full load blowing it all on turn 1. So I no offense to the player, I'm sure it's a fun list, but I hate this list.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, yeah, we don't know what their intent was. Their intent may have been to have 30-minute games or
Right.
20-minute games.
Sure, yeah,
and,
yeah.
like,
Gotta
I'm
get
going
the
to win
bar
or I'm
quick.
going to lose.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Respect.
not. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk
Yeah.
about another list from. This is also from Tacoma. So this is Hammers of Sigmar, Scions of the Storm, Grand Strat Spellcasting Savant. Here we've got a Knight Incantor with a Horfrost. We've got a Lord Imperatant with the Arcane Tome. We've got the Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger. Tyler, this person was listening to you as
Yeah.
the General with Master of Magic and the Scintillating Trail. 5 Vanquishers, 2 Fulminators, reinforced Tempestors, 3 Annihilators with Grand Hammers, 3 Annihilators with Shields, 3 Annihilators with Shields, 3 Raptors with Long Strike Crossbows, and then you've got an Acolytes, a Battle Reg, and a Redemption Brotherhood battalion. And then the Holy Command is Thunderbolt Volley or Call for Aid. I don't know which one.
I did that. Yeah, I was having to extrapolate because these were the app, and the app does not show us the Holy Command. So
Yes.
yeah.
One of the two. All wrapped up into 99 wounds with 4 drops. So, all right, Tyler, your take on this one. Why don't you kick us off?
I mean, this is, yeah, we can go quick. I can go quick on this one. It's similar to the last one. Like I said, that was a running theme with the majority of the list across all of the GTs that I looked at over the last 2 weekends is these too much gas, list. And this one is a little bit better. It's got the 4 Tempestors. We've sung the praise of those. I like the Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger, all else equal. I think it's still Master of Magic or Eater of Magic is, it's probably one of those two if you're going this setup here. Scintillating Trail is solid, but yeah, there's not enough else going on with this list. It's just still too many hammers for me. So, Dylan, do you feel much differently about this compared to obviously the last one? It was like the most extreme example you could imagine, but this one's not as bad, but kind of similar.
I definitely don't think this one's nearly as bad. I think the 4 Tempestors is kind of these big saving grace in this list.
Right.
I think they can probably actually tango in turns 2 and 3. I don't like the Shield Annihilators at all. You're not in Knights Excelsior, so they're not counting as your battle line. Just take something else. I don't like Fulminators right now. I think you could find plenty of other things. I think the idea for the list is there, but I think they need to dial back some of the alpha just a little bit.
Yeah, I'll actually say I don't hate Shield Annihilators in the current world. Like as a 1x3. At 170 points, I actually think they're an interesting little unit because they run around on a 2-up save and can do a little mortal wounds. Like they can actually synergize interestingly as a single unit with something else.
They definitely can do neat things. I just don't think this is a list for it.
No, but I do not like at all 9 of them. I just think that's like way over investing into something that's like supposed to be at best like sort of a combo synergistic piece with some other plan, right? Like they can do some interesting pinning here and there. They can do some interesting mortal wounds. Like so there is play there, but not with 9 of these bad boys. Like that's just I can't see it. Okay. Cool.
Morgonk, I would love for you to kick my butt at Gateway Open with your Nylana Grande version, whatever you're on. Please, let's do it. I have no idea how the hell he did so well. I really don't rate Annihilators with Grand Hammers. Maybe they're a little bit better now
Just
that they're
roll
cheaper.
sevens.
Just roll sevens, apparently, which I never could do when I was trying those stupid things out. Because either they just die immediately. So like, okay, yeah, exactly, Dylan. Like, how lucky do you feel about rolling sevens? Apparently, Morgonk never fails sevens. But yeah, anyway.
To be fair, the chance is relatively low. It's not too bad.
Sure.
But...
It's like 83%, I think, something like that with the reroll.
Make the charge. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, they'll make it.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. 83%, no issue.
Just don't fail any of them over the 5 game
or a
tournament.
5 turn game, 5 game tournament. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Let's talk Outlaw GT. So now we've moved over to the Outlaw GT. Here we have our Hammers of Sigmar, Scion Skin, Overshadow, and Bloodthirsty. We've got the Lord Relictor with High Priest and Translocate, Lord Castellant, Knight Incantor, this time with Horfrost. We have a reinforced is what I'm trying to say, Fulminator unit. Vanquishers, 2 Stormdrake Guard, 2 Stormdrake Guard, and then the Chariot. Then supporting all this, we also have the Aether Void Pendulum floating around. And we've got Call for Aid as our Holy Command, all wrapped up in a Battle Reg and an Acolytes for 4 drops. Okay, Cool. Can I make a general statement here?
Yes.
I know, Tyler, you're supporting this Acolytes thing in Stormcast. I'm against it.
Okay.
Acolytes is the one that's good against wizards, or the one that gives you primal dice?
The one that gives you primal dice. Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
If your people are alive, yes.
Yep.
Speak your mind, brother. Tell me.
Okay. So I've run 2 games now with Acolytes. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I was doing that in Skaven. All right, where I'm a million drops. Okay, and who cares? I've got chaff for days. You can make me go first or second. It's irrelevant. Most of my army teleports every round, right? Like I have like 10 things in ambush. Like whatever, man. It's irrelevant. Like cool. You know, I'm 52 drops. Let's go for this. You know, let's do it.
All right.
And for them, given the other interesting angle shooting that they can do around the current season and bonuses to magic and stuff like that, I've actually found taking Acolytes quite worth it to tip the scales occasionally in my favor. Like I went all in. I actually took a Gracier who had the command trait as well, the one that makes you like that gives you more primal magic dice. I was like, let's do this. Let's go all in, right?
Oh,
like,
sure. Yeah.
Push all the chips into magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in a game, I managed to get Merciless Blizzard off twice. So like, I'll that seems pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a difficult thing to cast, obviously on a 12, and I managed to pull it off twice between the various and sundry tricks I could pull off of standing near
Do you
knolls
remember?
and
Do you remember
stuff like
what you got up to each time? Do you remember what you got up to cast value total? Just out of curiosity.
Pretty high, like you
Yeah.
know,
18
approaching
plus.
20, yeah, basically.
20.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, to the point where like if they the 2 times it cast, their initial 2 dice were Garbo when they tried to unbind, right? And so it was just like they could blow all their dice and not catch me, is basically, unless they rolled like Yahtzeed 5s or 6s or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's just like not worth it. They just didn't even bother. They just ate the blizzard, right? I don't buy it in Stormcast. Like there's no other. I think the use of primal magic dice is to unbind, and I'm not trading drops like that for the chance at one more die. Like oftentimes this battalion doesn't even deliver an actual die. It's really easy to go a couple of turns and get 0 dice out of this battalion.
Sure.
Okay. And like I would much rather control the drops and control the thing in Stormcast. I just think anti-magic is your strength. You're going to get the primal dice anyways. Lean into the Cantor, lean into the PMD. I hate Acolytes in here, and I think to go to my earlier point, it's just throwing good money after bad. You have at best average-ish casters. What are you doing trying to make them good casters?
Yeah. So I think you have some fair points there. Yeah. I would be curious if folks add in the comments where people are at with Stormcast. We haven't talked about drop count with Stormcast yet. I've generally, and Dylan, curious your thoughts, I've generally been under the assumption that we are looking at more than one, some number more than one. And to what degree is it meaningful when you get over 1 to be lower? And so like when I think about that, like one of the baselines in my mind is Call for Raid and Thunderbolt Volley. I want both traditionally with the Stormcast list. But maybe that's a wrong assumption. Dylan, do you have any thoughts on drop count and where you are?
Yeah, so I think chasing the dragon of drops is very difficult for Stormcast. I think getting to 1 drop is like nigh impossible with the way that our units are right now. Less so because of the 3 heroes, but more so because of the 5 units. I feel like we don't want to put our chips into those baskets. We want more units. And so, like, really the best that I've found with most of my list is 2 1-drops, which if you want to go for 2 1-drops, I think that's fine. I think that's, like, the default button you can press. And, it is meaningful. But I think you'll probably still be, like, rolling at the very least for priority, like, probably at least half the time, I would say. That's just kind of, like, off-the-cuff number. I don't know, like, how truthful that actually is. But I think there's a lot of benefit to being higher drops, especially with the anti-magic and magic tools that we have, because you can see where they place their wizards, because a lot of people are low drops because the battalions are not great this season. So you can see where they place their wizards to counter place your incanter, place your other stuff out of unbind range. And I think like I played a tournament where I was like 11 drops or something really crazy like that. And I was very happy every single game when they put down their 2 1-drops, 1 or 2 1-drops, and I just got to completely counter deploy them.
Sure.
And I think that's absolutely meaningful for Stormcast.
And we've got a number of battle plans where we can get value out of counter deploy. So.
And I don't think we really care if we go first or second most of the time. Especially, I was running the Evocator cat list, and that list really doesn't care. I go first, cats slam into you. You go first, you slam into screens, and then I countercharge. Like,
Right.
And so it's kind of whatever.
Vince, just a quick defense of my running the Acolytes and talking about it. So, why I'm doing it personally, I mean, part of it is it's the usual asterisk, right? That I'm not building lists fully optimal, right? As usual. Like I'm making sacrifices. Okay, so I'm making
it's
a sacrifice.
New season, you've got to explore some stuff, right? Like
yeah. So part of the sacrifice is basically I need to have. It makes sense for me to have 5 heroes with the list that I'm running. Okay, so I want to do that. I want to have 2 enchantors. I'm just leaning into the unbinding. That's all that I'm doing. I could care less if I cast a single spell.
I got it.
That entire game. Yeah. So I'm finding it meaningful, keyword of late, with that in mind as the value, and then also because I'm already going Warlord, then I don't really care about drops because with my list I have to go Warlord essentially. Sure. I'm running. I want to have Call for Aid, Thunderbolt Volley. And then I've got Luckstone for my 1 artifact. So, yeah.
I want to sneak in real quick with a little segue on Domatan's Storm Coven. I think this unit is really neat. They're the new Underworld's Warband. They cost 275 points. They're a 2-cast, and they are not a hero. But they get a spell like a wizard normally does. And their spell for giving something fight first until your next turn doesn't have a range on it. And so you can get to some really interesting scenarios in games where you just literally like chuck them in a corner somewhere. And as long as they have visibility of the unit they want and they're both in the same quarter, so like it kind of has a range, kind of doesn't. As long as they're in the same quarter, you can get outside of the unbinds, especially later in the game, and use the primal dice to make sure it goes off because it does cast on an 8. I don't know if this is actually good, but it's absolutely something I want to try because I don't think people have realized that there's functionally not a range on it. And so you can be outside of unbind range a lot.
That's neat. All right, returning to this list real quick. I mean, I think I've never liked reinforced fulminators ever, even when they were like at the height of their power. I still hated reinforced fulminators. I've just always thought it was way too much investment in a single thing. I don't hate all the Storm Drake in this. That's probably fine, honestly. Like I think dragons are perfectly fine in the current season, for the reasons you mentioned above: battle tactics, things we talked about in previous shows, magic resistance, so on and so forth. So it's cool. And hey, at least we got the double vanquishers, which I do support that.
Yeah.
Cut the endless spell, upgrade them.
Sure.
I hate vanquishers. I think vanquishers are such a terrible unit.
Really? Why?
They're okay, so they're a 4-up save, so they're the same as a Sequitur for a save. They don't have the option for the ward, and the Sequiturs do more damage than them, even when Vanquishers are fully juiced, like getting their max attacks.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's like, I just think they don't serve any purpose besides being the cheapest battle line. And when you're already taking like Aether Void Pendulum, which I don't think is a great endless spell, just upgrade the battle line.
What are Sequiturs right now?
See, I would have made a different choice. You ready? I would have said... Like if I'm looking at this, you look at that pendulum, you look at that chariot, that's 200 points right there. There's 10 left over in the list. Like it's 1990 out of 2000. 210, that's 2 Tempestors right there. That's
I mean that's probably better.
So like if I'm gonna take the cheap vanquishers to get the cheap battle line, cool. Like that's a defensible play to me if you're just trying to get to the cheap battle line. Then you pack in the value everywhere else, right?
Yeah, I mean, but don't like use the points to like take an endless spell or something. Just upgrade your battle line, I think.
Right, that's fair. Okay.
Stormtrade Guard, I really don't rate them right now. For them, I mean, I could rate one unit. I would say they just seem like a unit that is overcosted to me at the moment. With their output. Somebody commented they like Fulminators more than Stormtrade. I would generally agree at the current price value of 230, 240 compared to 340. Dylan, where are you at with Stormtrade Guard?
So Stormtrade Guard are absolutely an answer piece to me. I think they do really well into certain armies. And so,
Mm.
like, if you feel like you have a bad, like, Lumineth matchup, I think they're pretty good into, and Tzeentch, I think, is where they're actually really good. I
Mm.
think if you have a bad, like, Lumineth and Tzeentch matchup, which Stormcast often does,
Yeah.
you slam in a unit of Stormdrake Guard and kind of band-aids that matchup a little bit,
Mm.
which I don't think Fulminators do that. I think,
Mm.
like, going for the 2 units and just kind of being like, these are a generally good unit, I think is a bit of a trap. But I don't think they're, like, bad.
Mm. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
All right. Midwest Meltdown. Let's take a swing over here into the Midwest. And so this is the 4-1 list, right? Ninth place at Midwest. This is
Yep.
Palmer from the Detroit Warhammer Club. Detroit repping as always.
Mm-hmm.
So great result. I think this was the best result of the weekend out of Stormcast, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the only 4-1, and then there was 1-3-2. And speaking of Detroit Warhammer Club, I don't know if he's watching, but shout out to Relian. He was at Midwest Meltdown, coming
I saw
back
that.
with the Night
Back-
Hunt. He did really well.
Back in the mix. Glad to
Yeah.
have him back. So here we've got some Hammers of Sigmar in Stormkeep. Grand Strategy Overshadow. The Incantor with Hoarfrost. The Castellan with the Tome. Knight Relictor with High Priest and Translocation. Our old friend, the current everybody's favorite Borrowed Wizard. The Battle Mage with Wild Form, of course. Then we got 5 Libbies. Again, that big reinforced unit of Fulminators. 15 Vindictors.
There it is.
3 Raptors with crossbows. Warlord, Vanguard, 10 drops, double Holy Command. I assume, Tyler, like you like a lot more about this list than some previous lists.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is getting more along the lines of some of what we've been discussing. This has a lot better balance in my mind. And again, I'm just going on a limb. I don't think he had the call for Raiden Thermal Volley, but just assuming maybe he did. But it seems like an obvious. That's what you would do. Yeah. Love the big unit of 15 Vindictors. They can be buffed up by the Battle Mage. Obviously, the Fulminators can as well. He's got the Castellan, hit him with, just fantastic hero choices here. I don't mind. Dylan, obviously, we live in a very privileged world of a 2-up reroll. 3-up reroll ain't too bad with Translocation.
In a list like this, where, like, it's pretty clear that, like, he's getting value out of his points, I think it's okay. Yeah. I don't love it still. I don't think I would do it personally, but I understand why.
Right. Because he's not going Spellcasting Savant, he's got another good option with Overshadow. We'll be interested to hear your thoughts on the grand strategy, Dylan, that you've chosen, which I kind of get, but it's peculiar. It's a little left field. But Overshadow, that's the one, where you have to, have all enemy battle line destroyed, I believe, for Overshadow.
And have one of your battle lines still alive.
One of your battle lines still alive, right.
Yeah.
So there's a Stormcast version of this, which is basically that, but it's got to be Redeemer. So you probably just go Overshadow to make it generic. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's also this event had a warband that you got for free. So Zandire's Truth Seekers, getting that for free. That's quite nice. 230.
It's a good warband.
It's a very good warband. Yeah, something that certainly is adding a lot of value to this list on top. But I think it's a great list. Yeah, more reflective of some of the principles we've been discussing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like this list quite a lot. It does the thing that you see fairly often in some Stormcast lists when you see a Battle Mage, and that you just super juice one of the units. In this case, it's the 4 Fulminators, I'm sure. Yeah. And you just translocate them, give them +2 to charge, and they just slam into stuff and start tearing face. And so that's why I actually like the reinforced Fulminators here. More so than I think in probably any list I've ever seen. And I think that they absolutely can be a problem, I think the Draca lines do something very, very similar to this, where you just put both of the Castellans plus bonuses to save onto them, you Hoarfrost them, and you just throw them forward, and your opponent has to deal with this problem while you get to move up the board with this block of Vindictors, the Liberators that can go tag objectives. You're on Stormkeep, so you count as a ton on objectives with your Liberators. And
we haven't mentioned that. Absolutely, yeah. This is a nice one with Stormkeep.
Yeah. I like this list. I think it's a little inconsistent, just because Knight Relictor and relying on the Battle Mage. But, that's... It's the way of the world.
As you said, it gives you some protection if people want to give you first, which they're going to want to because your 10 drops here, right? Well, okay, I've got a real potential play here. I'm going to be out of unbind range with my battle mage, except against Seraphon. One inconsistency, though, or oddity, is he's got the long strikes with Stormkeep. So yeah, there is a risk of playing somebody right with real range damage, magic or shooting output that could potentially, because you're not going to be keeping them off the board. I mean, they could be backbordered, but some matchups are going to be able to AoE damage them off or range damage them off in general, and bye-bye long strikes, or at least depleting them. So that's one of the potential Achilles heels of this kind of list with Stormkeep.
Yeah, I think you're basically relying on the distraction, right? Because I think I think the thought there is, if you end up, honestly, I don't know that I hate that part of the play. Because to me, it's like, well, if you focused any attention on these guys, that means you weren't dealing with the juiced fulminators in your face, and you weren't dealing with all the things that are actually in the midboard winning me the game right now. Right? So, like, how much of your offensive power did you have to use to go screw around with my backboarded long strikes that are like doing damage? Don't get me wrong, but like they're not going to win the game on their own. Right?
Yeah.
I think it can play with target priority in an interesting way.
It's got, I think a lot of good Stormcast list will have 4 legitimate threats, and then not 3, but 4 actually. And this is what this has: two ranged, and then 2. Again, I'm using threats kind of in a general sense, right? Like just
problems,
pieces, problems,
There you go. Sure.
Things,
Yeah, my only thing I've never liked to bet at all on the YOLO in strategy. I don't care how well constructed this particular Rube Goldberg machine is, right? Like, yes, you can bet like with the backboarded Battle Mage and the Castellan, and we've set them up for this, and they're Hoarfrosted and their Mystic Shield and their Holy Lantern, and then we jump them forward, and now it's still roll a 7 twice. We talked about that before, right? Because that's still the number. It's still roll a 7 twice, right? Like get a 7 on 2. I just like I really, really have never favored that style of play with Stormcast. I think like I'm more of like a spread and close the trap kind of player. Like I wanna play in the midboard. I want to use pieces. I want to see where you're committing resources, react accordingly, and then try to close the trap on you once you've misstepped in any way. Right?
Yeah.
And so
that I do think these lists can do that still. Like let's say like you fail the translocation turn 1 and your fulminators are just sitting there. Like you have the 15 block of Vindictors to kind of like be this big frontline screen, because the fulminators don't just like disappear. They're still there. Sure. They're still a problem. And so like they're there for the counter charge. And that's the very similar thing that happens with my evocator list. You love it when the Rube Goldberg machine goes off, but you have enough defense and kind of like can toe up the board to not just like lose the game when it fails. Unlike the Annihilator list, where I think they just kind of like, I failed the 7, my Annihilator's here, and now it is just gone. It's because they just kill it on their turn.
Fair. No, I think the worst case is you succeed on the prayer and then fail the charge. That's when things are going wrong. Yes.
I mean, they're still there. I've done that with a list like this before, but with Retributors instead of Fulminators. And it's like they're not killing a thing that turn, but they're still there. They're still there. They're still juiced, and like you still have to deal with them. Otherwise, they kill you next turn.
Realistically, if you have layered the saves on them, they actually don't care that much about being charged. Especially if the Hoarfrost has gone off in any kind of meaningful way, they will actually do quite a ton of damage, even if charged. All right, cool. Midwest Meltdown number 2. This is the 3-2 list from there. Here we've got an Astral Templars list in Scions the Storm, Overshadow, and Bloodthirsty. The Lord Aquilor, who is the general with Shock and Awe. The Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger. The Knight Zephyros, the Knight Incantor, the Knight Arcanum, just flying in the face of everything we've said for this whole show. And then 5 Vanguard Hunters, 5 Vanguard Hunters, 5 Vanguard Hunters, 3 Vanguard Paladors, 3 Vanguard Paladors, 3 Raptors with long strike crossbows, 3 Raptors with long strike crossbows, 3 Aether Wings, 6 Griffhounds, and my worst call ever in the most recent history of the show, the Malevolent Maelstrom, in a Battle Reg, an Acolytes, and a Redemption Brotherhood to combine into a 4-drop. I'm going to be honest, this is so far afield from the list I would ever think about playing.
That's beautiful.
This is basically units I have never fielded. This army. I think there's like the Knight Incantor.
Yeah, it's like
Sure.
Knight Incanter and Raptors. Everything else is
Yeah. Like nothing else on this list has ever made it into a list I have played ever. So I have no basis of comparison. Like this could be the greatest list in the history of the world, and I wouldn't understand how this thing is working. So somebody else take this.
Dylan, do you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was actually, ironically enough, just workshopping with one of my friends earlier today about a list with Paladors. And
Nice.
so I feel like I have some fresh thoughts on this list.
Was
I
that
think...
friend Drew Wilson, perchance?
Yeah, it was. How did you know?
How did I know?
But yeah, so I think the game plan of Paladors is don't engage on even playing field ever. You want to chip things down throughout the course of the game, and then like swoop in and kill them with the Paladors, and just like take objectives, drag your opponent around the map, and stuff like that. And I think this list is kind of the like standard way you'd think of doing that. I still don't love the Akalor, but like at this point, you're playing Paladors, you're playing the flavor, so
Right.
play the Akalor. And I think this list is one absolutely probably beats up on people that don't know what's coming. Very few people have played against Paladors and Vanguard Hunters and know what all this stuff is. And if you don't know how to play against it, it can absolutely catch you off guard and just like I said, just tear you around the map and you have no idea what you're doing. But I think if you play against a player that knows what they're doing and more importantly has some kind of fast unit that can catch you, or some kind of durable unit that you can't chip down, I don't see a way this list wins. And I think Go Trick is the answer to that problem. But there are other issues with Go Trick, of course.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Andrew is my favorite new Stormcast player because I've been wanting to see somebody run and do well with a Vanguard Chamber themed list for a long time. We hardly ever see it. We saw a little bit in 2.0, but I was just ecstatic to see that he went 3-2. That's 20th is great with this list, going 3-2 with this list because you're right. I mean, it does have real issues. Obviously, hunters are nice, but I mean they're chip damage oriented. They're not going to do a whole lot. I do think this list can play better in this season than the last season with the nature of some of these battle tactics, surround and destroy, intimidate the invaders. That we have more missions where we're a little more spread out. We were very sort of concentrated in last year's set of battle plans, more so than this year. So I think it's got some more things going in its favor. But yeah, still it's going to be pretty challenging. If anybody doesn't know, the Vanguard Hunters, they basically operate like tree revs. I don't know if it's start of the movement phase or any time in the movement phase. You can just pick them up. Now, if they're in combat, they cannot do this. But they can come wholly within 6 of a board edge. So in that regard, tree revs are better because they have no limitation like that. But I don't think the Paladors have any limitation though, right? Paladors can just
Paladors
do
are
away.
Anytime. I thought Tree
Nice.
Revenants also was in place of a normal move, but maybe I'm misremembering
that. Tree Revs is in place of a normal move.
Yeah, so they can't do it out of combat.
Exactly. Yeah. But
Paladors can. Paladors is the same as Translocate, I'm fairly certain.
Interesting.
Hunters, I don't know. I think they are also in place of a normal move, but don't quote me on that.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Because I just recently played a couple of Hunters to try them out. But yeah, it's a fascinating list. Congrats, man, Andrew, on, if you're listening, great show. The Knight Arcanum, I think he was just going Vents with the Acolytes. Yep, probably just needed, because he's, probably just needed a cheap hero, cheap second wizard.
Also, hear me out. Griffhounds have 4 attacks each. You put Hoarfrost on them, and they actually kind of slap, like way more than anybody thinks they would.
Celestial Blade. Let's see what I'm looking at. All in attack. Celestial Blades. Get them on 2s and 3s. Hoarfrost. -3 Ren. Let's go. Yeah.
And it's like 30 attacks or whatever. Like they can catch people off guard.
Those are good dogs.
Yep. And then they bounce out, and it's like, oh, they're gone.
Yeah.
All right, Dylan's list. Here we go. All right, Dylan. So your list is Hammers, Scions of the Storm. Your grand strat is Barren Landscape. You got the old Lord Relictor, High Priest, and Translocate. Lord Arcanum on Celestial Dracoline with Celestial Instincts and Celestial Blades. You got the Knight Incantor with Hoarfrost, the Lord Castellant with the Arcane Tome. We got 5 Sekis, 5 Libbies, 2 Tempesters. We've got the 6x Evocators on Kittycator, or the Kittykators, I should say, a 6x Kittycator. 3 Raptors, 3 Aether Wings, Lunchbox, the Soul Seeker, Warlord and Vanguard, 11 drops for all the reasons you talked about earlier. I mean, this is definitely playing out. This is playing to a lot of different outs. I'll say that right away. Like, what's obvious here is there is both a primary strat, but there's a lot of outs. Okay. Hit us with it. Hit us with why you like this list so much.
Yeah, so I think the cats are like far and away the most important part of this list. Your turn 1 is usually that Rube Goldberg machine we talked about. You cast Hoarfrost, you cast Lauchin, you move them forward, and you just kind of like slam them into stuff. I haven't gotten burned on it yet in my 6 or 7 games I've played with this list, but it's coming. You know, like it's not gonna work 100% of the time. But I think the list has enough outs that you can do other things with it. I think the 3 units of Redeemers, the 2 Sequitors and the Liberators, are enough to kind of like hold the line. And I almost always put the Raptors up in the sky along with the Aetherwings. And so they basically come down with a free screen in front of them. They get the +1 to hit, so you're saving CP. We've talked a bunch about how CP starved this army is. The Lord Arcanum on Celestial Dracoline has Cycle of the Storm, and so you give your Dracoline unit even more survivability, along with the like most likely +2 save from the Castellant, and then he juices them to do even more damage with their mount attacks. The Incanter is an auto unbind that's just a problem answerer. And Tempesters are just so good of a unit. I had points for him, and I wanted him in.
Fair enough. Yes, I mean the Incantor is obvious. We've talked about him like 100 times, but he is Mr. Answers, right? It's like if you got a problem, he'll solve it. Just check out this dispel scroll and go to your next spell. It's like exactly. All right, go ahead, Tyler.
If you're making changes, what are you cutting or changing with this list?
So
if you have to.
I think the hero Dracoline is the most obvious place to cut.
That's where I'm at. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a win more kind of piece. When your Dracolines get in and he's in range, they do more and they kill more stuff, and you have a more explosive turn. And he's like, he gets retreat and charge. He gets to ferry around on Laukin in the mid game. And so what'll usually happen is I'll move Laukin up with the big block of evocators, and then I'll position in a way that he will be riding around on Laukin for the rest of the game. With retreat and charge, he can be extremely slippery and really hard to kill. And he's pretty good in combat. Like I said, he has the Cycle of the Storm, which is pretty much always value. And he just kind of like does things. But I do think he is a obvious choice to cut if you find yourself wanting to play other pieces.
Have you thought about what might swap in?
Not particularly. I think like more Tempesters feels like an obvious answer. Like cut the Aetherwings, cut the Dracoline, put in more Tempesters. Maybe play around with a few other things. Like you could, I don't know. There's enough points, and you're in hammers, so Tempesters are battle line that you can probably take out a battle line and upgrade it to a Tempester. If you like screw around with a few things.
There's this little unit, Questor Soulsworn. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I do like Questor Soulsworn a lot. We've talked about how good they are. I don't think this is necessarily the list for them because you want to be in your opponent's face so much. You want the cats to go forward so much that the Soulsworn may not be getting value from the objective outside of your territory. Because you're going to be in your opponent's territory so much. And like it is another like mobile piece. This list has a ton of mobility between like Lauchin and the Translocate and Scion's drop in that you can just like flip around the board even more than you already are. So I think it's absolutely an option, but I think this list is maybe a little too tight for him.
I like the list though. Yeah, there's a lot of nice pieces here. I mean, it does have 3 clear threats, not quite the 4. And you could say like in aggregate, those 5. You've got essentially up to 15 Sequitors in this list, right? With Call for Aid. Ideally, you're using Call for. I mean, that's pretty nice. At 7 attacks, you're getting with 3s and 3s -1/2 damage, potentially a little bit better with buffs. So like, yeah, I love you've got a lot of pieces here. You can play the board well. You can play battle tactics well. Yeah, very sharp list. which I would expect nothing less from you. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Dig it. And I think we can all celebrate Kitty Cater's glorious return. Absolutely.
I think they're so good with Hoarfrost. You get Hoarfrost off, and they just they are the best unit in the game for Hoarfrost receiving buffs. I think that's actually an important point. I think Hoarfrost buffs Dracolines more than any other unit in the game.
With you've got how many Grand Stave? 4. Oh yeah, 4.
Yeah,
Grand
you
Staves.
take the max Grand Staves, which is 4.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, Baron, I meant to ask about Baron Icecape as your Grand Strat. So that's the one where you have to kill all heroes with
all
artifacts.
Power. Yep, and then keep them out of the center as well.
Yeah.
It's Battle Tag or Grand Strats are rough this season. It's doable. I find myself losing on my battle line fairly regularly when I play this list because you have to have a starting battle line for Overshadow, right? So the Call for Aid doesn't work.
I believe that's true.
Yeah, from your starting army. So Call for Aid doesn't work with that. I don't know, I definitely see the argument for switching to Overshadow, and I think if you want to, I think that's totally fine. I've found Baron Icecape to be doable though, because you kind of just you essentially bowl into them turn 1, and as the cats kind of keep munching through stuff, they keep killing stuff.
Yeah, you're hoping to put them on the reaction on the back foot.
Yeah,
on the reaction. So
exactly.
you're on the Shania. You're sort of controlling the tempo of the game, and so hence you should be able to roll into that. Yep.
Yeah, but I'm not super sold on the Grand Strat. Play what you want, to be honest.
Sure.
But this one's worked out for me.
Okay. All right, let's end on Tyler. Let's we've got. Well, then we'll just do a quick summary and head out of here because we're late. So Tyler, hit me, buddy. Hammers, Scions, Spellcasting Savant is what you went for. You've got the Knight Incantor General with Eater of Magic and Hoarfrost. You got another Knight Incantor with Merciless Blizzard. We've got Vandus. We've got the Knight Draconis with the build you talked about, Luckstone and Celestial Instincts. And then we've got the Castellan. So running the big 5 hero pack you'd mentioned earlier in the show. 10 Vindictors, 5 Vanquishers, 5 Vanquishers, 5 Vigilors, 5 Vigilors, 3 Praetors to keep your general alive and fighting. And then 3 Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows, wrapped up in an Acolytes, Warlord, Redemption Brotherhood, total of 7 drops. The most middling of drops we've managed to get at here.
Yeah, it's helped me out a few times, so surprisingly, but yeah.
Sure. Now, I think a lot of people would look at this and say, where's the actual damage? Where's the threat? Because you don't have a lot of these lists. We've been able to clearly pick out the threat. 5 Vigilors, they do some shooting. They're not really the threat, right? They're not. They don't blow stuff up. Obviously, the Raptors with crossbows. Okay, fine, sure. It's 3 of them. It does work. That's fine, and it's got Thunderbolt volley. We get it. That does damage.
Raptors are good.
Yeah, Raptors are good. News 11, right? Sure. But 10 Vindictors. Okay, not really a threat. It's not. It's more of an anvil piece than it is, or an attrition anvil, I should say. It can do damage in a long grind, but plenty of units will outgrind you. The Vanquishers are what they are. They're the cheap battle line. So what's your actual strat here for getting the damage through would be my question.
Yeah, so you definitely keyed in, Vince, on what has been the main challenge with this list is that in too many games I've been having to pass a DPS check and I've not been able to pass it. So Archeon, I have even Scarbrand. I was playing against Scarbrand. It's Scarbrand, right? You should be able to handle Scarbrand with ranged output. And I had no answer to Scarbrand other than Mercy. Okay, this has just gone too far, right? So that's why the long strikes got added into the list. I hate playing long strikes, but there they are because I needed more DPS. Quester Soulsworn was not really going to help me as much with this list. As I said, the things. My last game, literally last night, was the first time in about 10 games with this list that things clicked. I was sufficiently passing the test I needed to pass. So, it's the usual kind of list that I like to play, right? It's designed to hopefully be more than meets the eye, designed to be more of the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's all about synergistic plays. It's about having a very clear idea about executing battle tactics and, having a lot of optionality in executing battle tactics. It's playing the board really well. So it's got 12 drops. So I can put up to 6 pieces off the board. Which is quite lovely. Sometimes you can put Vandus and the 10 Vindictors off the board. Just put them off the board, right? So that's something they have to think about and consider. That is very meaningful. in a number of situations. So it take a little while to explain. The Knight Draconis is certainly a huge piece of this list, as part of, again, the combo damage that I've been, as my phrase of the night. Yeah, where the two options of 24 threat range on the board buffed up with Castellant and or Mystic Shield, and or he's off the board with an auto charge of 12. And so that's been incredibly meaningful. He's been the MVP of the list. But yeah, it's been quite good at competing against lists that are more obviously stronger than is itself. Dylan, do you have any thoughts, concerns, notes, etc.?
Quite like Vince said, I immediately looked at this list. I'm like, how are you killing anything?
Sure.
I think I've played all these units in different packages, kind of like how you were saying, and I've seen the weaknesses of a lot of these packages firsthand, and I don't know. I don't love it. I think
I'm enjoying this so much.
I was gonna say you're enjoying
my Nurgle at NashCon. Vince thought it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe that's an overstatement. But we were in the hotel room, like, I don't see it.
I believe that was the quote. I don't see it. Yeah.
I think, Tyler, you're a very, very good player at making these kind of lists work, right? I don't think your average player can grab this list and be like, all right, let's go. Sure. I think this is a Tyler special as close as it gets.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's the Tyler special in here real quick. I just want to jump in. Those 3 Praetors that don't need to be there.
Yep.
We're just throwing 140 points in the toilet. This is you. This is you. Okay.
My lack of accepting risk.
Correct.
In the world.
Correct. This is your like, oh, but what if my Eye of the Gods table rolls bad when you were playing S2D, right? Who cares? Then it happens. Like, yeah, that's going to happen once in a while. But it's so rare that you would spend any resources to hedge against it, right? Like there's just, those guys they're just not worth it. They're not doing anything. Like, I don't know what you're buying for 140 points. That's something else, but I'm pretty sure I'd find something.
Vigilers, Praetors, that's 440 points. That's 10 Protectors, which I feel like
You've got me thinking about writing an alternate list with 10 Protectors. I hate to go back to the well, but you and I have both.
I am absolutely somebody who presses the button on 10 Protectors every time I can. But,
sure, and like that's strong. I don't know that you need to go that far. Like the 5 Vigilers could still have play in there, but like you pull the 2 of them out, you got 290 points to play with. Like that's something. Like 2 Tempestors and they're 2 Tempestors and that'd work. 2 Tempestors and like some birdies for your crossbows would be an interesting pickup to me.
Say that again. I was distracted. What did you say?
So if you pulled 5 of the Vigilers and the 3 Praetors, that's 290 points. You could replace that with 2 Tempestors and Aetherwings.
And
that's 280, right? Yeah, right in my head.
That's pretty nice.
And so like I actually because then your Raptors have bird friends. The Tempestors are really great operators, threats, everything, like handle a lot of current problems as we've discussed. And like you how much are you trying to marker light at once, right, is really what it comes down to. You know what I mean? Like the number of turns where you need to do that.
It's often Vindictors, Vigilors, Vandus in one area, and then the other 5 with the Draconis in another area, but sure, or benefiting the long strikes. But yeah, no, that's definitely a fair point. Yes, I have had a number of games where the Praetors. All right, cool. So the Knight Incantor is going to be safe. All right, boys, let's go off and do something. But it is. You're right. Like it is those games where I'm facing 4 Vexillors or just whatever I'm facing that has the ability to reach out. And now I do have 2 auto unbinds, so that's going to make it more difficult to do that with. It's mainly probably early on, it's about the AoE output, and that it's going to be relatively, I don't know, it's not that likely you're going to be facing an AoE that it can just snap the fingers and take out the Knight Incantor. That is with the new Lookout Stir, you're not having to deal with shooting as much anymore, and then you're just having to worry about magic ranged output, like Spell Portal or whatnot to reach out and touch a Knight Incantor and just take it out. But with 2 auto unbinds, you're helping that. So you might be right. I might be able to get away with it, but yeah, I'm hesitant, obviously.
Take the risk.
Drop the Praetors, drop the Vanquishers, put in Tempestors is probably like the real answer.
Oh gosh,
the more I look at this.
Running Sim Tempester sounds amazing. Yeah, and again, I've shouted him out a number of times, but shout out to my friend Dan, who got me on running some of these things. So.
Yep.
And I have said my distaste of Vandus with the 10 Vindictors. I don't think he adds enough. I think you're better off spending those points elsewhere, especially when you're running the Knight Draconis, who is already like this damage at a premium kind of piece.
All right, you just keep it up. I'm gonna have to grudge you game one.
I was gonna say, just soak it in.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
make you skip your turn again.
Let's close it out here, gentlemen. All right.
Way to beat me. I figured out what happened. I don't know if I ever told you, dude, but I finally figured out. Anyway, we don't have to go through it, but yeah, I did finally figure out what happened.
All right, so I think the summary here is your Stormcast lists work well with a sort of integrative approach. You want these complementary tools. You want to be able to play to your outs. You want to achieve the battle tactics. You got to be thinking about this stuff, right? I think all of us agree that it's about this sort of like combination of different elements acting as best in class in their role with both a clearly defined strategy, like this is my primary play, but also this is my outs. Like I have options. I have these ways that I can operate that are going to be not like I don't have only this one road I can drive down, right?
Right.
Like, sure, I've got a primary highway I want to take to work, but I know the back roads as well, just in case there's a traffic accident, right? Like that's the best way I would describe it. There are a lot of trap units. Now, what I'll say is that I think with a lot of these lists we've seen in kind of everything we've talked about is that it's not like taking one unit that's underpowered is going to spell doom for your list or something you can't win and you're 0-5 or some garbage like that. That's not how it is. Like the world is not ones and zeros, right? Like if you've got a pet unit you love and that's the way you want to spend your 200 points, go nuts. But I think over-investment into those trap or overcosted or bad units is where it just gets rough. Like to me, it's like you got about 200 points to just like you can be wacky, know how you use it. If you know it well, that's gonna be worth like you knowing the unit is worth way more than it being slightly underpowered. Right? Like if you've used the unit a lot and it's your pet unit and you know how to get the most out of it and where it has good matchups, then fine, it'll punch above its weight and you'll be okay. Just don't overinvest in that stuff so that you end up being basically like in a season where I think Stormcast are already on the back foot, you don't want to be tipped over. That puts you on tilt. And you know, most Stormcast lists in the current season are struggling. You look at those results from the first weekend and it's like, let me tell you what, folks, we didn't report them all, but it is rough. Okay,
it's rough out there for us.
Yeah, it is a rough showing for Stormcast, who had decent representation at most of these tournaments and did not put up the results. But that doesn't mean the average can't be broken, right? It absolutely can, as we saw with the 4-1 list, right? Like that was a very much average breaking list, so it can be done. All right, Dylan. Thank you so much, sir. This was great. It was fantastic.
I had an amazing time. I loved being here.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Appreciate all of your extremely deep Stormcast knowledge. Was wonderfully appreciated. So thank you, sir. You're welcome back anytime.
I would love to be back when Stormcast inevitably does more things in the meta.
There you go. Well, absolutely. You're gonna be top of the list. Tyler, thank you, sir. As always, all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like on your way out or subscribe. Do all those things. We really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, there's lots of ways you can do that. Tell your friends about the show. Share it on social media. All that kind of stuff is like really great and helps other people find Warhammer Weekly. There's a Patreon down there focused on hobby and taking your next step on your hobby journey. If that's what interests you, you can check that out. So do all those fun things. But thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Don't forget, early show next week at some time, TBD. Watch me on Twitter. I will always announce it there. You'll see it go up early and be announced here on YouTube. So set the little notification bell, all that kind of stuff. But as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.